Sajid, it will take more time?
No, sir. Only 2-3 minutes.
Right. 50 minutes more.
No, 2-3 minutes. Within 2 or 3 minutes, we will be fixing the problem. I mean, we are outsourcing.
It is
2 minutes, sir. So 2 minutes.
already we are 6 minutes late.
Yeah, it's some technical issues. Only 2 minutes we will start. Sorry, sir.
Okay.
Will this be relayed on Facebook Live also?
Yeah. We are streaming this in the YouTube.
YouTube.
Yeah.
So, hello everyone. Welcome to the Youth Dialogue conducting by Campus Friend of India as part of the nationwide campaign Undeclared Emergency Students for Liberty, Equality and Fraternity. I would like to invite Brother Ashwan Sadiq, National General Secretary of Campus Friend of India, for the welcome speech.
Good evening, all. Today, the day where the largest democracy with written constitution has faced a national emergency. Presently, India is facing similar or more worsen than the situation it was held upon 1975. The man who promised Achedi is taking the nation, is taking the country towards the independence. The administration, political system is working more for Ambani's, Adani's, and rather than for poor and general public. Also, the country has been badly hit with the pandemic. Well, such situation, the PM of the country has didn't bother about the situation, but he is busy with self-praising and self-promotion. Nation's economy is falling day by day, and the condition of citizens are getting worsened by basic necessities and fuel prices rising. Also, the people are fed up with GSTs and excessive tax. From the past 7 years, the fascist regime in the country has created a shocking atmosphere for the citizens. The nation is heading towards a dictator state. Students, academicians, social and human rights activists who are criticizing the government policies or agitating against the anti-people policies or laws are being caged and used fake cases and by draconian laws like UAP, etc. BJP is playing a hate politics to reach its Hindutva agenda and to reach its dictatorship state agenda. Medias are threatened or purchased so as they to be silent on government failures. Social media platforms like Twitter, etc., are being threatened so that they are allowed to criticize in their platforms about the union government or the Prime Minister. Meanwhile, the recent Delhi High Court verdict regarding student activist bail clearly mentions that the dissenters or the activists or people, those who are speaking against the government or those who are speaking against the government policies, are has been framed as anti-nationals or as a terrorist. The anti-people policies like Farms Bill, CAB, Tribal Talaq Bill, National Education Policy, UAP Amendment Act has been passed in both houses without considering the dissents. Also, the bills like KAB, which is against the spirit of the Constitution, which has been in implementation stage. Meanwhile, the petition is on Supreme Court table. The agenda, which the BJP has been regularly stated that Vipaksha Bharat or opposition free India, clearly explicit that the BJP is aiming a state of Hindutva or BJP is aiming a state of dictator group. The nation is undergoing an undeclared emergency. The undeclared emergency situation has been brought by the BJP from the past 7 years. The people, the citizens have been lynching to death. The fundamental rights have been revoked. The constitutional values have been damaged. So there is a necessity of stopping this hate politics. There is a necessity of stopping this fascism's brutal. The nation must be united against this fascist regime. The nation must create an anti-fascist platform so that the fascist agenda, the agenda of destructions can be stopped. So now I am heading towards my duty. So I am welcoming MS Sajid, National President, Campus Front of India, for this program. Also, Ram Punyani sir, renowned writer and human rights activist, who will inaugurate this program. I heartily welcome you, sir. Also, Anis Ahmed, General Secretary, Popular Front of India. I also welcome him. Also, one among the CI protesters, the protest in Jamia, and also the student of Jamia Millia Islamia, Safura Zargar. I also welcome her to our program. Also, Jayan Jignasu, Executive Committee Member, RJD. I welcome you, sir. Also, Huzaifa Amir Rashadi, Ex-Secretary, Aligarh Muslim University Students Union. I also welcome him to our program. Also, Askin Ahmad, Central Secretary, All Assam Minority Students Union. I also welcome him to our program. I also welcome Ajmal Khan, renowned writer and program to our program. Also, Khalid Khan, Assistant Professor, Indian Institute of Dalit Studies. I also welcome him to our program. And I also welcome all the viewers, those who are joined from different parts of our state, of our nation, to our program. Welcome and all.
Thank you, brother. And now we have Professor Rambuniani for the inauguration session. He's a writer, son of human rights activist who is courageously working for safeguarding the communal harmony in our nation, despite the threat calls and blackmailings he has been receiving for standing for justice, for fighting for truth. I would like to invite him for the inaugural session. Please, sir.
Yeah. Dear friends, I am very thankful to you for inviting me to inaugurate this very relevant topic, because this is something very important. I'm sure in this meeting today we will not only describe what is happening to stifle the democracy, to eradicate the democracy. It is not just emergency where some measures are put by the state from the top to restrict civil liberties and freedom of. And so I hope that we will first discuss, see what is behind all this, and try to think about how to restore democracy, how to come back to the situation which was 1 decade ago, 2 decades ago, the type of things which we had been living in a democratic. So that is, I think, very important to me, that we also take up those topics, and democratic values which our constitution stands for. Now, in the welcome speech, it has democracy is being stifled. Now, emergency was given by a diktat, by a order. It was a very bad period, and there were a lot of things done by people like Sanjay Gandhi and others, which were very oppressive to the religious minorities and for the freedom of the press and other freedoms which we had. That period lasted for 19 months, after which it was lifted, and we were fortunate to have back the democracy. Now, currently the things are different. Currently the things are different. As soon as this government came to power 7 years ago, I hope you will recall that this period is like emergency was first pointed out by none else than one of the senior most members of this Krishna Advani repeatedly said that the situations are like emergency. And then we saw that things are getting worse and worse. Now, why we call it that it is worse than emergency? Number one is that our democratic institutions. Parliament is the biggest democratic institution we have, and in the way CAA Act was passed to pass the legislations which are suiting the government. Now, so Parliament is also, on one hand, has a brute majority of the ruling party. On the second hand, the parliamentary committees discussing the act and all those things have been sidetracked. And with the president of Rajya Sabha being a member of BJP himself, he also, the way he behaved at the time of CA voting was something which was a direct assault on democratic freedoms. Now, if we see that Indian cabinet system, in this prime minister is supposed to be first amongst the equals. Now, what has happened over here is that he has become whole and soul, taking his whims and which suit the interest of the organization which is steering the agenda of Hindu nationalism, Hindutva. Let us not confuse. We are not talking against Hindu religion. Hindu religion, like all other religions, has valuable things to contribute to the human society. We have seen the greatest Hindu in the 20th century, Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi. We have seen other great Hindus who identified with the freedom movement, secularism, and democracy. But here, what is happening in the name of Hinduism, the type of politics which is being imposed is a type of mix of fundamentalism and fascism. So the democratic institutions, one is parliament, second is cabinet, third, if we see, there are institutions like election commission, CBI, enforcement directors and others. And in those also, we see that the democratic instincts have become much more weaker. And 1 minute. Hello. So they have also been weakened. And at the same time, we see that these institutions, and along with that, judiciary has been seriously compromised from within by a clever maneuver of offering carrots to the judges and by other manipulations. We recently saw one Chief Justice retiring and immediately getting Rajya Sabha seat. The indications are very clear that if judiciary conforms to the dictates of the government, to the wishes of the government, there is a lot waiting for the individual judges. That's why we have seen that many of the judgments are favoring the government, and they have nothing to do with the constitutional values. The same thing I'll say apply to the judgments related to the Babri Mosque. All those judgments which came were based on faith, and later on, like I must say that Liberhan Commission, you all remember, Liberhan Commission clearly pointed out who were the people who have been responsible for the crime of demolition. But the Supreme Court, in its wisdom, decided to exonerate all those. So these are second thing. Then if we see one of the greatest pillars of democracy is the media. And from since the time this Prime Minister was the Chief Minister of Gujarat, many corporate houses consciously decided to take over the media. And today, I think 80% of the television channels, large section of language press is talking the language which is not conducive to the growth, prosperity, promotion and sustenance of democratic values. So this media is third, second, and third. If you see that during this time, if you refer to Anderson and Damle's book on RSS, which came out a few years ago, it says that during the first 2-3 years of BJP coming to power, the number of RSS shakhas has doubled. So first, RSS, a authoritarian organization hoping to build Hindu Rashtra on the model of what Hitler did in Germany or Mussolini did in Italy, on those lines with some modifications suitable to here. So their basic agenda, first I would like to say in brief, the basic agenda is, of course, as pointed out, what we say that is worse than emergency, the democratic rights of students to protest, like we saw in JNU. Then Safura Zargar is here. She can testify much better than I can talk about it. JNU, Jamia Millia, Hyderabad Central Universities, IIT Chennai, IIT Madras, all these places, the students' struggles, their expressions were stifled in a very brutal way. Then as pointed out in the inaugural speech, the people criticizing the government are so fundamental duty of media and the citizens of the country. I must remind our first Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru time, there was a cartoon weekly called Shankar's Weekly, and cartoonist Shankar, he was very critical and harsh on Jawaharlal Nehru. Jawaharlal Nehru invited him for a cup of tea, appreciated his work and said, this is a real democratic work. And later on, he started collecting those cartoons. And whenever he was writing a letter to his daughter Indira Gandhi, he self-correcting mechanism for a ruler. It comes from criticism. And criticism in a democratic society is always very healthy. So what we are seeing, filling of democratic values, democratic institutions, and the direct result of this is visible on the type of things which culminated in Shaheen Bagh. Please, I'm not going to go into details of that whole NRC, CAA, and then resulting in Shaheen Bagh. Before that, how the students were attacked in Jamia Millia and AMU, that I'm not going into. But Shaheen Bagh, I see as an index of the pain and anguish of a minority community which is suffering from last many decades, and the suffering is peaking. We saw that particular great movement, then we are seeing presently farmers are agitating from last 6 months, over 6 months, and the government is totally insensitive to such things. So many of our friends are recently Narwal and others were released, 3 of them were released, but painful fact is that such over 19 intellectuals, activists who are the great asset for the nation, they are within the confines of the jail despite their non-involvement in Bhima Koregaon and other cases. So how this government is using some this thing and trying to see that all the opposition to its policies is wiped out. This is manifested in things like lynchings, in Gharwapsi, in campaigns on love jihad and others. So actually, I will say the basic difference between emergency and today's situation is that today's situation is number of times worse than what we saw in emergency. One of the major reasons that emergency was there because of a particular ruler trying to save her ministership. Now this we are seeing Mahatma Gandhi, Maulana Baba Sahib Ambedkar has few representatives. And when you talk of Hindu nationalism, it is parallel and similar to Muslim nationalism, which was there in freedom movement as represented by Jinnah and Surawardi. It is also similar to the Buddhist nationalism which we are seeing in Myanmar and Sri Lanka. It is also similar to Christian fundamentalism. Its basic 4 or 5 features I will characterize before I come to what should be done. The basic character is total centralization of authority, authoritarianism, and imposition of its ideology on the whole nation, number one. Number two, a deliberate marginalization minorities, not only Muslims, Adivasis and this agenda. Secondly, you see on one hand, there is an increase in the poverty, increase in destitution, India falling on the hunger index and other lines. On the other hand, few corporate houses are prospering to the sky. Now, this again you see in Germany also, there were some industrialists who benefited a lot from the policies unleashed by Hitler. So it is not just emergency we saw, we suffered and came out of it. Coming out from such a situation, which is much deeper in intensity, is the problem is that this ideology has been pumped, has been imposed, has been drilled into the minds of large section of population. Please see that this type of a regime cannot stand unless a large section of population ideologically indoctrinated into this negative hate for minorities, hate for human rights workers, hate for the intellectuals, hatred for the freedom of expression. All this is a characteristic of this particular regime. So friends, question is not just to define the problem, question is how to confront it, to restore the type of dream which the fathers of our fathers of our freedom movement, the names which I have outlined, there are hundreds of them. Their dream has to be realized, and whatever we achieved during last 50, 60, initial say 50, 60 years of republic, through which industry, education, irrigation, agriculture, and other things progress. Now all that process is going in the reverse gear. I'm not an economist, but I was surprised to know our GDP is now running in minus. Our unemployment is breaking the sky. So, and farmers' condition, I told you. So, friends, you please discuss in detail this in this webinar. Plus, also think how we can undo it, how we can confront ideologically strongly promoting, how we can see that the hatred generated by RSS, hatred against religious minorities, and subjugation of Dalits and Adivasis, how it can be combated. Of course, the next elections are going to be very crucial. We are all very glad about Bengal election, but I must tell you, in West Bengal, on one side you can be glad, on other side you should be worried that the voting percentage of BJP has gone up so much. UP elections are coming. During COVID, also the mismanagement, you may be remembering how cleverly they tried to put the whole blame on Tablighi Jamaat and Muslims for the spread of Corona. That's a small part of it. I will not go into the detail of it. So this type of hatred, which is generated deliberately through shakhas, through media, and through all other channels, this hatred has to be combated. Number two, in the elections, I'll come in the reverse way. In the elections, we have to ensure that the party which behaves like this should never come to power. Already we have suffered for 7 years, 3 more years are there to go, but in different states like UP and others. Of course, I don't understand electoral politics very well, but I understand one thing, that if put the pressure on the opposition, they can come and present a united front against the ruling BJP party. In this united front, the national parties and the regional parties have to negotiate. In this, they have to try to compromise with each other, taking along each other's egos and interests of power. How will they do it? It is not in our hand. So what is in our hand is to take these things to the masses, to the people, and also to take representations to the political parties that this is what needs to be done. Second, what I request, what I urge is that there are many social movements. Campus Friends of India is one of them. There are hundreds and thousands of such. We need to try to collaborate with each other. I am not saying we have to merge with each other. I am saying wherever our agenda and goal is matching, and we have to evolve a common minimum program. What is the common minimum program? The common minimum program is one, defense of democracy, and the three values which are there incorporated in your this thing: liberty, equality, fraternity. So all those people who believe in this need to come together. We need to respect diversity, we need to respect pluralism, and all our social movements need to make a sort of a common platform which can put pressure on the political party. And whatever muck has been created during last 7 years, that will also have to be cleaned in university campuses. The type of people who are becoming vice chancellors and faculty, the type of people who are already entering different institutions of state, they are ideologically indoctrinated, they are more committed to ideology than to the constitution. All this will have to be ensuring that this party never comes to power again. I am not for this or that party, but I am for values. And the way Campus Friend talks about liberty, equality, fraternity, I think that has to be the core of our political understanding in the community. So with this, I inaugurate your this webinar, and I'm sure with these deliberations, you will be able to reach far and wide and try to ensure that India comes out from this dark tunnel of emergency raised to the power of 10, emergency raised to the power of 10, or whatever you call it. We come out from this dark tunnel and breathe a democratic air in times to come. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much for joining us. I'm sure this is going to be, your words is going to be fruitful, worth in our pathways. Yes, it is clear that a collective resistance is necessary to resist this evil forces. Now, I would like to invite Brother Anis Ahmed Sahib, National General Secretary of Popular Front of India. Anis Sahib, you there? Yeah. I think it's not here. Then I must. Yes, there is. No. I would like to invite Khalid Khan, the Assistant Professor of Indian Institute of Dalit Studies. Mr. Khalid Khan, please. Hello, sir. You can hear me? One second.
Is it for me or?
So I think Anisa was here. I would like to, yes, Anisa, please join us.
Yeah. Yeah. First of all, I would like to thank the organizers for organizing such a important webinar on a topic on such a day. So without wasting time, I will just move into a few of the points that I wanted to bring before the audience here and all the participants here. First thing, let's be very clear that we are living under a fascist regime. So there is no hiding fact here. We can't hide any fact, or we can't even deny it. We are living under a fascist regime. That is the first point we'll have to be very, very clear about. It's a fascist regime in India that we are living under. And wherever there is a fascist regime in the world, anywhere, wherever there were fascist regime, there is oppression, because oppression is the trademark of any fascist regime. You cannot expect any fascist regime to function without oppression. So if there is oppression happening in India, it's only and only because you are living under a fascist regime, and this is something is expected. Secondly, whenever there is a fascist regime, the option before the user or the people are only two. So you have either one option is you just have to close your eyes of all oppression that's happening, and don't comment on it, don't speak about it, and just try to be the cheerleader of the government. This is one very easy option before you. The second option before you is to speak up against the injustice, to speak up against whatever things you're seeing, the oppression and the atrocities that are happening. You have to speak up. So you have just two options, either to remain silent, become their cheerleaders, or you have to speak up. Now, if you opt for the first option, it's very easy. You don't have any trouble, you don't have any problem, you don't have any challenges, there won't be any issues for you. But if you opt for the second option, that is, if you want to speak against the injustice, if you want to speak against the atrocities, then there will be a lot of issues. You cannot expect mercy from a fascist regime. Anyone who calls himself as an activist, anyone who calls himself a person who wants to do something for the society, who wants to fight for the rights, who wants to fight for the protection of the rights, he has to have this clarity that he cannot expect any mercy from the fascist regime. Expecting mercy from the fascist regime itself is the most foolish thing a person can do who is called himself as a social activist. You cannot expect any mercy from them. Number two, even complaining doesn't make any sense. You can't complain because you cannot complain because they are doing what they are meant to do. That is their nature. That is how the fascists are. When you start this activity, when you are into activism, when you're fighting for justice, on day one you should know the fact that I am speaking against something that the ruling dispensation stands for. The moment I speak for those things, they won't show me any gratitude, they won't show me any mercy, and I can't even complain to them that why are you doing so and so thing for me? Why are you not showing, respecting my democratic values? Because they don't believe in democratic value. So for the people who don't believe in democratic value, we can't even complain to them that why are you not respecting my democratic value? So we can't expect any mercy from them, and we cannot even expect to be safe. Finally, there is nothing called as comfort zone activism. If some people think that there is something called as comfort zone activism, where you will do activism, you will fight for the rights of the people, you will speak against the oppression that is happening, and you will be very safe. There won't be any problem for you. So such type of comfort zone activism doesn't exist. At least in India, it doesn't exist. You don't have any such option anywhere available before you. Even the people who used to sit at their houses and were thinking that at least I can't go onto the streets, I'll be sitting at my AC room, I'll be using social media as part of my activism, I'll be a little bit safe in social media, but even they are not safe now, because even whatever you do, whatever you speak in social media, you'll face the the heat, they will come after you. So nothing is safe. So let's be clear. Let's be clear into one thing, that when you are opposing a fascist regime, be ready. Be ready for whatever issues are going to come, and expect it. Because when you expect it, the fear within you will go away. The fear within us comes when we don't expect any such problem. We expect that nothing is going to happen. They're not going to touch me. They're not going to give any problem to me, or they're not going to destroy my life, or they're not going to put me behind the jails. Something might happen. They'll arrest me. I'll go inside that van and I'll come back. But those situation is gone. You will be targeted, and you have to be prepared for that. Every morning when you wake up, you have to wake up thinking that today, as I'm speaking against oppression, as I'm speaking for people's rights, as I'm speaking for the protection of the constitutional right, the people who hate the constitutional right are going to target me today. The target can be anything. Either they'll physically attack you, or they'll use all sorts of the government machineries against you, or they'll put a lot of pressure, political pressure, or all type of things on you. So you have to be prepared. So this is the first rule before anyone who wants to do something for the betterment of the society, or who wants to do for the betterment of the protection of the our constitutional rights. This is number one. Number two, you're talking about emergency. There is already emergency in India. It's an undeclared emergency. See, the ones who are ruling in India, they're not stupid people that go ahead and once they'll start declaring emergency. They know very well that declaring an emergency for the world's biggest democracy will be suicidal for them. So they won't come all of a sudden like the previous rulers who have done, who announced emergency. This dispensation will not do it. The RSS or the BJP, they will never announce emergency, but they will do everything they can using the loopholes in the system to impose an undeclared emergency. What is an undeclared emergency? Everything that is going to happen in emergency will happen to you in the name of democracy. People, you can't even complain. You can't even explain it to others why it's happening to me. Your rights will be targeted. Your citizenship will be challenged. You'll be thrown behind the bars. Fabricated cases will be put on you. And even though you know you are innocent, the people know you are innocent, but to prove you're innocent and just get you out of bail will take years. So this is what is going to happen. Okay, this is what is going to happen, because many people say that during the emergency, many activists were put behind the bars, and after the emergency was lifted, they came in. But now, if you see, we have people who are inside the jails, who are behind the bar for almost the same period that the emergency was imposed. Like it was for 19 months, and we'll have some people here and there in India who are behind the bar for more than 19 months just because of speaking for the rights, just for criticizing the anti-people policies of the BJP government. So whatever used to happen in the emergency period is happening now without declaring emergency. We are living in an undeclared emergency situation in India. And this government may declare emergency when it suits their political needs. So if they think that declaring emergency suits them, they'll declare it. But other than that, they won't declare it, because whatever they want, their purpose has been served without declaring it. Now, this government has become a very predictable government. Okay, they have become very predictable, especially the BJP regime, or I can say the RSS regime, because it's the RSS that is ruling India by proxy, by keeping some of the stooges in front, and it's the RSS that is ruling India. So they have become very predictable. What's predictable is they have a standard operating procedure of how to target dissent. It's a standard operating procedure. They've mastered into it. They have each and every step put it into place. And no matter what happens, where it happens, the same standard operating procedure will come into picture. I'll give you 3 examples through which you'll come to know what is the standard operating procedure. The standard operating procedure will be, number 1, whoever speaks against any policy of the government, you have to destroy his credibility. So how do you destroy his credibility? You destroy his credibility by labeling him something. Any name. You can create a name. If you're not happy with some old names, you can come with some new names. Like the Tukde Tukde gang was a new innovation. You'll have something called as love jihad, love jihadi. Now you come up with land jihadi. You come up with some innovative labels will come. So the first thing will be, don't allow the people to take them seriously. Label them something, destroy their credibility, so no one will believe them. So this is the first thing. Number two, create a violence attacking this people's movement and then justify the action against them. So any peaceful movement that's happening anywhere in India, violence will be created by the agencies. We have to be very clear in saying that they will create violence. Number two. Number three, once they are arrested, all the draconian laws will be used to crush them. Whether it's UAPA, whether it is the Money Laundering Act, whether it is the NSA, all these draconian laws are only in place only to trouble you. So they'll use each and every draconian law to target you after you're arrested. And number three, when these key people are arrested or behind the bars and who are facing all these draconian acts on them, at that time, destroy these people movements in their absence. So this is the standard operating procedure that is being used. Number one, you digitally delegitimize the movement by destroying their credibility, create violence and book them, arrest the people claiming them the perpetrators of violence. Number three, put all sort of fabricated cases using the draconian law. And number two, in the absence of the leaders and the activists, destroy that movement. So this is the standard operating procedure that is being done in India. Just take three examples, I'll tell you. There were three very important movements in India after the BJP came to power. There are many, but I can think of three major things which could have been made a lot of difference in the Indian society. Number one was the Bhima Koregaon issue. The Bhima Koregaon movement that started in Maharashtra, basically every year when they commemorate the Bhima Koregaon incident, it was like a pride for the Dalit activists. The Dalit people used to talk about pride, remembering a war in which a Dalit army defeated the Peshwa army. In a situation where untouchability was prevalent. During that time, they are remembering about their forefathers claiming that they defeated the Dalit army under the British, who were in the British army, defeated the Peshwa army, who were Brahmins. And they were celebrating this incident, calling that this is a very pride moment for Dalits. And year on year, if you see that the attendance and the mass for this Bhima Koregaon was increasing year on year on. So now how to stop this? How to stop this movement that is bringing confidence among the Dalits? We saw violence getting created. The same first thing will be they will call you by all names. They will delegitimize you. They will destroy your credibility. Number one, all the people who are in that movement, they were either called Naxals, they were either called Maoists, they were either called people who are foreign funded. So they tried to demolish their credibility. When it didn't work, violence was created, and the people who were the victims, they themselves were made the culprits. And all the leaders were arrested, even the people who were not related to this movement, but they were in their hit list. They were in the hit list of various government agencies, various security agencies. Those people were somehow linked. Some Sudha Bharadwaj, some Stan Stanley, some people who were related or not related at all to this movement. They were also targeted because they wanted an opportunity to completely demolish the Dalit movement and the movements led by progressive people in India, the progressive activists. And then the third step came into picture, all sort of draconian laws were imposed on them, and still we see that they are in jail. So you see the chronology. Now compare this with what happened with the CA. They tried to defame the CA protest. All the activists who were in the CA protest, they called them anti-nationals, they called them Pakistan sponsored, they called them terrorists, they called them a hell lot of names. What happened after that? When they could not break that movement, a Delhi violence happened, and Delhi violence was not a random incident. It was a planned act by the BJP RS. It was planned. There are a lot of proofs that it was planned. Why it was planned? Because they wanted to create a violence, and they wanted to put the blame of the entire violence on all the activists who were leading the CA protest. And that happened. All the people who are active in CA, where are they? You cannot book them for CA. You'll book them for Delhi violence. They were booked on the Delhi violence crime. The victims themselves were made the culprits. All draconian laws were put on them. And all the major activists were behind the bars. There was lockdown announced. Now what you do is you don't even allow people to come out and protest. You come up with laws that if you protest, we'll seize your property. So what this entire process was tried to completely derail and demolish the CA protest. And finally, see the farmers' protest. The same thing was done. The leaders were first, the farmer activists were first defamed as Palestini. Secondly, there was a violence that was created, and all the leaders of the farmers' leaders were booked with UAPA, and now they tried to demolish the farmers' movement. So this is a standard operating procedure that's happening, and this will keep happening. So now, if you are a social activist, if you are fighting for some social cause, or if you want to protect the constitution, if you are speaking against some of the anti-people policies of the government, then be ready to be labeled. There will be label on you. Don't think that they won't label you. Don't think that they will, whatever message you're giving, they will allow that message to be communicated. No, they will defame you. They will delegitimize you so that your message will not be taken seriously. Now, how they will do it is they can go to any extent to, they will go to any extent to fabricate it. All the services of imaginary script writers will be taken. You might have seen that in Gujarat violence, what happened is after the Gujarat riots, a lot of various organizations conducted reports, and in all the reports, it's clear that it was the BJP RSS who committed the Gujarat violence. But now, if you come to Delhi and what happened to Bangalore DJLE, you might have seen that the RSS-sponsored intellectuals are coming in, creating reports. They are coming in with fact-finding reports, and what happened with that fact-finding reports becomes the charge sheet. You go and see the charge sheet in Bangalore DJLE riots. You go and see the charge sheet in the Delhi riots. The charge sheet is nothing but the copy and paste of the report that were prepared by the RSS group. The RSS group prepared they call it as a fact-finding report. The same fact-finding report prepared by the RSS group was copied and pasted in the charge sheet. So fabrication will happen there. Not just fabrication. There will be planting of evidences. Fake, to justify their fabrications, they have to plant evidence. I can tell you, in our case, in Popular Front of India's case, two of our members, Anshar and Feroz, who were in Bihar. From Bihar, they were traveling to their hometowns, and they had gone there for some of our expansion work. When the train moved from Bihar and it entered UP, they were arrested in UP, kept under illegal custody for 6 days. They were tortured, and only when a police case was filed in their hometown by their family member that Feroz and Arshad were missing, the police came up with a fabricated story with all planted evidence saying that these people were having weapons, these people are having explosives, these people are having all sort of explosive conducted terrorist strike. So this is what is going to happen. So let's not think that they can't frame me because I'm clean. No, you will be clean. They'll plant this thing in your houses. They'll come and plant such things in your houses. They'll come and create a fabricated stories. They have script writers who will write imaginary stories, and that stories will be used in the charge sheet. And to justify those charge sheet, evidences will be planted. This is what will happen. This is what is happening. And finally, what we are saying, the media will support it. The media will not even question this. Just take the case of Siddiq Kapan. Siddiq Kapan and 3 others have been arrested. The 2 leaders of Campus Front have been arrested. For what they have been arrested? That they were planning, they were supposed to go and create riots. Where was the violence? There was no violence. There was no riots. There was no issue happened. The issue never happened. They didn't even reach Hathras. So they are behind the bar, okay, for an imaginary violence that was supposed to happen. And who is Siddiq Kapan? Siddiq Kapan, he is a secretary of a respected journalist union. He is not someone like whom we can say, "Bhai, koi student activist hai, no, aapke aage piche koi bhi nahi." He is a respected journalist working and being with other respected journalists. He is secretary of a respected journalist union. If such type of people are arrested and the media are calling him a terrorist, the media are calling him a dubious figure, what can we expect? So leave aside. So the media will always follow what the government's narrative is. And not just the media, even the people will believe. Sometimes you may be thinking that when the government is saying such type of lies, when the security agencies are making such type of fabricated cases, why the people will believe it? So it's nothing to do with the BJP or something. You might remember that during the UPA government, when Shivraj Patil was the home minister, many Muslim youths were arrested in the name of terrorism. Many Muslim youths were arrested. And there was a trend of arresting Muslim youths. What happened to those Muslim youths? Most of them were acquitted after being in jail for 8 years, 9 years, 10 years, 12 years. After that, they were proved to be innocent. But just remember, no one knows what happened to them. After they come out, no one cares for them. But when they were arrested on fabricated charges, at that time, everyone believed what the security agencies were saying. The media supported it. No one questioned them. So this happened not just during the BJP time, it also happened during the UPA time. So now we have a government which is expert in lies, which is expert in fabricating cases, which is expert in all this jumlabazi. So they will create such type of scenario where they will create a story and you will be proved as the culprit, and they'll make people to believe it because they know very well how to play with the fear of the people. They will present you as a threat to the nation. They will present you as a danger to the nation. They will create such an image of yours that they will try to create fear among the people that, look, we are taking action on these people because they are a threat to the nation. So this is what the trend is going to happen. This is what is happening. So now again, what I'm trying to say is come back to my point. Number one, okay, this is what is happening and this is what is going to happen. So if someone is really serious in confronting the anti-people policies or any oppression or any violation of human rights, whether it's the Citizenship Act or whether it be the atrocities on students or on farmers or on Dalits or on Adivasis or on minorities, it's not so easy. It's not so easy. The government has ensured that they have ensured with all the standard operating procedure that they will try to make people silent. So now if you want to speak against it, you have to be prepared for it. You have to be prepared for the worst. But just remember one thing, only the brave will come forward. And I'm really happy that I am today sitting with a panelist here who are the most brave people in India. The panelists who are here today are the people who are the most brave people. And I'm damn sure that after 20, 50 years, when the country will remember that such type of fascist regime was ruling in India, we had a panel, we had people in India who are not afraid for all the issues. We are not afraid of all the atrocities that are going to happen on them, and they were very, very confident dealing with them. So this is what option we have. Let us expect the worst. Let us expect that what a fascist regime can do, and let us be prepared to face it, because protection of democracy is an important task for us. We got democracy because what our forefathers have done, for sacrifices of theirs. Now it's our responsibility when we are passing on this country to the next generation. Let's ensure that democracy exists, the constitutional rights exist. As before me, Punyani sir said, see, I'll conclude with that. There will be a lot of difference of opinions. Lot of difference of opinion between different groups. Some of the policies of one groups will not be accepted to others, or the policies of one individual will not be accepted to others. But we need to have a common minimum program. Okay, because now in such a scenario, when day by day our constitutional rights are being snatched, in such time, instead of concentrating in the protection of constitutional right, if we come up with points like, I won't work with that person, I won't work with this person, then I think there is no bigger tragedy than that. Okay, then no one needs to be, we need to have a permanent understanding. There needs to be a permanent understanding between all the secular forces, all the forces who are here to protect democracy, and have a common minimum program and be ready to face this phase so that we can protect democracy. Again, with these things, I would like to thank the organizers for giving me the time. And if I've exceeded the time, I would really like to apologize for that. Thank you.
Thank you, Anis Sahab. Thank you for your insightful words. As you mentioned, here with us, we have Safura Zargar. This is not a new name for us. In fact, she is a courageous and a strong woman who led the protest, and as you mentioned earlier, labeled because she stood for justice, and has been incarcerated for many days, that is very unjustly incarcerated. I think now let's hear her words. I would like to invite Sister Safura Zargar.
Assalamu alaikum, Fatima. Thank you everybody for having me here. Thank you CFI for having this very important discussion. And I think Anis Bhai before me has said so much. I mean, they were courageous words, and it was really brave of what he said. And it is so difficult when he talked about what are the excesses that are going to be on us, our rights violations, that are going to happen to us, and we have to keep this in mind. Um, and then we have to we need to expect all of this. We need to expect the worst, is what he said. And I mean, that is very important. We do, I think a brave person is not somebody who does not fear. I think a brave person is somebody who fears and yet chooses to overcome it, right? It is not like when we were protesting, there was no fear. Every day when I would sleep, I would think that, now, because the media was like, the mainstream media especially was like vultures on us, every move, every word, it was constantly under public scrutiny, and it was constantly, they tried to manipulate everything we did. And every day there was a new conspiracy to manipulate, new fake news, disinformation, misinformation campaign against Jamia that was there. And every day that I would sleep, I would just, I mean, we were so wary that we would just anticipate that what would come tomorrow, what would we now have to deal with tomorrow. So obviously there was no fear, but one day at a time, with God's grace, we tried to just overcome that fear. So that is something very important that we understand. And definitely, I don't feel that you as a human, you shouldn't be fearful, because we do not have that majority privilege that we can say that, we are fearless. I mean, there is a constant threat of incarceration, not just incarceration. There is a threat to our life, not just our life. There is a threat to the life of the people who are close to us. And in such a circumstance, you have to be fearful. You should be fearful. And that is why that is when you will tread very, very carefully. Right. Coming back to the topic that we are discussing today, it is about undeclared emergency. Ram said before me talked about the emergency, and I would just like to highlight one or two aspects that he's already said, but still. Most importantly, the emergency that was there in 1975, that was imposed in 1975, it was imposed institutionally, there was a clear suspension of civil liberty. It was announced, it was told, and the elections were suspended. And the whole world knew about it, it was being talked about. And there was, we didn't have to constantly, keep asserting the fact that there is an emergency, that there is a grave, violation of human rights in India. And everybody knew it, and there was a lot of criticism over it also. And that is the major difference between the undeclared, between the emergency that was there and the emergency that we are faced right now. There is fascism, there is authoritarianism, there is majoritarianism, but all under the guise of democracy. Democracy in India currently has completely become a farce. Under the guise of democracy, all of these things are happening. That makes it all the more difficult, for us to actually, bring to light all of these excesses that are happening, the crimes against the minorities in India that is happening, the rampant Islamophobia that is, here right now, the hate crimes that are happening, the dehumanization, the criminalization of a community that is, that is underway in India right now. And it's been 7 years like this, 7 years like this. In any kind of an extreme situation, you cannot expect that you will go on for years and you will not have irreparable losses. Of course, the time lost is never going to come back, and it has pushed us years back in the, in the fight of establishing a more proactive democracy. We were going to go forward. We are going to become more democratic, but we are going backward. We are becoming more autocratic. We are becoming more authoritative. And of course, there is, and as Anis Bhai said, there is no doubt about it that we are living under a fascist regime. And India's fascism is even more dangerous than the fascism that we have seen previously and that has been studied previously. Of course, all fascist leaders are charismatic, but the amount of disinformation, the amount of misinformation campaign that is being run, and the hate campaign that is run, that makes it all the more difficult, coupled with majoritarianism. It is a complex nature of fascism that we experience in India today. That is what makes it different for the from the emergency that was declared. At least we knew that, and we constantly did not have to prove to highlight the dangerous situation that was there in India, which now we have to keep doing. But over the last 7 years, through our resistance, we have been able to do that to some extent. The world is actually eyeing the kind of treatment that is being meted out to Indian minorities, especially the curbing of the press freedom, how it has been happening. I mean, recently, Rana Ayub, I mean, many people would feel that she was untouchable because, at least you have class privilege. But, in front of majority privilege, nothing, no other privilege can last, because majority privilege is too powerful to overcome by any other kind. So your identity as a Muslim is at the center stage, and all other identities are at the back, and you try however you can. You cannot escape it, and that is the truth that we must accept to ourselves. I would like to say this in the light of the good Muslim, bad Muslim dichotomy that we as Muslims have been working with for the past 70 years in India. We think that we will behave in a certain way. We would be a passive Muslim, nod our head to everything, work like a model minority. So it'll be all good, and we will be accepted. But the recent events have proven otherwise, and it is good. It is a wake-up call for all of us as a community to understand that by shedding our identity or by being apologists, we are not going to land anywhere. I mean, we saw this in the case of Sharjeel Imam. As a community, we disowned him, threw him under the bus. And I think for the student community at large, it was a very big lesson, because ultimately we all met the same fate. And I think that there is a lesson to take from that, but we are still not taking that lesson. Now, you see this in the case of Umar Gautam, Dr. Umar Gautam, that is happening. There are so many leaders today who we have respected. I have respected Muslim leaders who are constantly trying to disown him and disassociate for him. I mean, they are going to come for you tomorrow. I mean, what makes you think that if today you will disown yourself from them, they are not going to come for you? I mean, you have to understand that there is power in collective struggle. You have to understand that you cannot throw each other, under the bus. And that is something, we have not learned, and we need to learn again and again. Thirdly, you see it in the case of Miran Haider. He had, I mean, not enough support from the people that he has expected has come out in his favor, and that is very, very disappointing. So what does that make us think of our allies? I mean, as a community, I feel that we need to send a clear message to the people who claim to be our allies, that selectively, you cannot ally with us selectively. You need to give us full support, unequal support, unconditional support. That is when we take you as an ally, and it needs to come from the collective community together, which has not come out. In the case of the Tablighi Jamaat, again, I really want to stress this point in terms of forming solidarities. And, Ram sir also talked about, and even Anis Bhai talked about, common minimum program, right? I understand that we kind of form solidarities on the basis of common minimum program. But when it comes to protecting individual freedoms, individual people, individual lives, I think a common minimum program that does not give unconditional support is of no use. I mean, there cannot be a common minimum program if we keep throwing each other under the bus, right? In the case of Tablighi Jamaat, we see that there were so many progressive voices from amongst the Muslim community who talked about Islamophobia, who talked about identity, who talked about resistance, who actually just threw them to the wolves. And how the case has gone, and they've stood and fought for themselves. And today, we should be ashamed of ourselves as a community that we were so quick to just run them over, and dissociate ourselves from the Tablighi Jamaat. And there was so much of misinformation. There was grave human rights violations that happened with them when they were kept under so-called isolation, which was actually an illegal confinement, inhuman illegal confinement that was happening. And we failed to highlight it as a community, and our allies failed to stand with us, and we ourselves also as a community threw them under the bus. So all of these things, when we talk about forming solidarities, it is important that there has to be an unconditional support also, because now the HC judgment has said it, and we are more openly and more comfortably saying it, that the protest is not terrorism, Chakka Jam is not sedition. How many of our allies, or even us, were comfortable saying that Chakka Jam is not sedition just 15 days back? I don't think anybody, if I would say it on a platform, people would get very uncomfortable, because don't talk about it. And now that is what the HC judgment is said, and we all hail it as a win-win for democracy, which it is definitely upholding of democracy, but it comes a year too late. It comes a year too late. That is a reality. Now, again, today, when Dr. Umar Gautam is being, criminalized for dawa work, we will hesitate to say that dawa is not a crime. We will not say it. We will not give our unconditional support, because, we have, as a community, we have internalized all of that Islamophobia, and it is very important for us to come out of it. Unconditional support is very, very important. It needs to be given. It is very disheartening to see that recently there were a lot of fundraisers for education in foreign university that was started over Twitter, over the social media. And over the last month, many of those fundraisers, they were each fundraiser about 30 to 40 lakhs people were able to raise, except those who couldn't raise such the amount were majoritarily Muslims, right? And there were criticism amongst our community saying that, as a community, jahan par there is no basic education to the people, you are asking money for a privilege. It is very disheartening. And there was a student of AMU amongst that who actually was so bullied that he actually had to withdraw the fundraiser and return the amount that was raised. As a community, we need to understand that developing and investing in our social and cultural capital, it is a big investment. It is an investment that we must make, and getting higher education from a foreign university is definitely not a privilege. In fact, we not being able to get it is a deprivation. It is an exclusion, and it is marginalization that we are not able to get it. So all of these things, we need to introspect and look back that, where are we actually going forward, even in forming a common minimum program. Common minimum program does not mean that, these are the common minimum programs that we are going to stick to. But if you exceed and you have some problems, sorry, we are not going to extend your support. No, that is not a common minimum program. Solidarities need to be unconditional. Allies need to be unconditional. That is something that is non-negotiable, and that is something that we need to clearly voice out. If we talk about erasure of voices, it is not necessary that we are competing for who is the bigger victim here. There is no even competition in that respect. The data clearly shows who is the victim. But when somebody calls out that erasure, it is a time to introspect. It is not that somebody is trying to divide the community, right? Or break open the common minimum program. Not at all. The common minimum program needs to take into account criticism. It needs to understand that criticism will build us. it will better us, right? It will take us forward, and rather than mudslinging, that needs to be avoided, and that is something that is not happening in terms of the common minimum program. To sustain the common minimum program is not the responsibility of only one community. It is a responsibility of all the stakeholders of that common minimum program, especially those stakeholders who come from the majority community, who can exercise that little bit of, who have that majority privilege to do so. I mean, I feel that community is more responsible, has more responsibility to make sure and sustain that common minimum program, and actually also to take criticism in a good way, rather than take it as negation or erasure of their struggles. In the common minimum program, I feel one very important thing is also the what needs to be center stage. When we're talking about exclusion of for example the CAA, if we see that Muslims talked about, I mean, of course it is about saving the constitution, of course it is about equality, liberty, fraternity and all of that, but it is also about the coming of age of a community which has started speaking for itself. I mean, rather than letting others speak for us, rather than, as a Muslim woman, I chose to voice my own concerns because I know better what is more important for me. Getting entry into a mosque is not affecting my life. I can read namaz anywhere inside my house, or as I have, if I'm traveling, I go to any mosque, and I have never been denied permission to attend that mosque. I pray in a corner, I come out. So I will decide what issue is important to me. I will decide whether triple talaq is affecting me more, or whether people, Islamophobia is affecting me more. When I travel, people look at me in a certain way because I am covering my head, or I'm using certain words and all of that. I mean, that draws attention, right? When I'm talking on the phone and I say Alhamdulillah, and suddenly everybody's turned towards me and, oh my God, what kind of a person is this? So yeah, that is more concerning for me, rather than me being allowed or disallowed from entering the mosque. And I will decide that. That is the reason my voice needs to be center stage, right? So when we talk about the common minimum program, we need to understand it is important that we come to a common minimum program, we have those conversations, but it is also important to understand what kind of conversations we are going to have, who is going to lead those conversations, and all of these things are very important and they cannot be negated, right? Because I attend a lot of conversations these days, and even on Clubhouse, even on Twitter Spaces, and I see that there are people who are, talking so much about so many things, and it's great that they're having these conversations. But where are the voices? And it's great. I mean, you must be coming with a positive mindset that narrating your experiences of a certain movement, in which you were not center stage, but you actually don't. I mean, if you're a true ally, you would also want to empower that community. You don't always want to speak for that community or on behalf of that community. You will truly try to empower that community, and that is something that is not coming forward. So I mean, when we talk about common minimum program, it is a predetermined notion that we will be asked to compromise on so many things, and it shouldn't be like that. I mean, common minimum program does not mean that it is the responsibility of one community to uphold that program and always be under the scrutiny. Each and every word, each and every action is under the public glare, and I mean, hundreds of people will just stand with one wrong word. Hundreds of people will just stand to condemn all of it and negate entire voice and the entire movement and in general. So that the meaning of common minimum program needs to be very, very clear. And I say this from experience because when we were in Jamia, we were working with the common minimum program, and these are the problems that we have personally faced in working with the common minimum program, right? Lastly, I also want to talk about and I think I've said everything, but again, I would like to reiterate the fact that it is important every day, if not twice a day or thrice a day or 100 times a day, to talk about those people who are facing an unjust incarceration. Be it Siddiqui Kapan, be it Masood Ahmad, be it Miran Haider, be it Gulfisha Fatima, be it Shafaur Rahman. And it is important that we keep taking these names again and again and again, so that, history, I mean, the mainstream narrative does not erase it, right? Which will always, the voice of the subaltern is always, it's always, there is a hegemonic language which will always try to, erase the voice of the subaltern. But because I am out, it is my responsibility to make sure that these voices and these names are never forgotten. And as long as I live, we continue to fight for these voices. And in an atmosphere of, and especially, how the targeting of the CFI and the PFI has been, and it is commendable that in spite of all of that, I mean, such programs are being hosted, because you never know, like, I shut my laptop, go back home, and then there is an FIR on me. I mean, it's quite expectant, and we people live under this threat continuously, day in and day out, and Anis Bhai has talked a lot about it. So with that, I think I rest my case. Inqilab Zindabad to everybody. Yeah, Fatima, I think you've muted yourself and we can't hear you.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry. Okay. Thank you. Indeed, it is very necessary for us to join hands with unconditional support. Also, to be unapologetic in this era. So next, we have Huzaifa Amr Rashadi with us, who is the ex-president of Aligarh Muslim University Students Union. I hope he will join us. Brother Huzaifa. I think your mic is mute.
अस्सलाम वालेकुम। सबसे पहले मैं शुक्रिया अदा करूंगा कैंपस फ्रंट ऑफ इंडिया का और स्पेशली सैफुर रहमान का यहाँ आज मधु करने के लिए, इनवाइट करने के लिए। आज का आज 25 जून भी है और आज ही के दिन 1975 में जो इमरजेंसी डिक्लेयर की गई थी उसमें और आज में बहुत कुछ फर्क नहीं है। अगर हम लोग देखें तो उस टाइम भी जो इमरजेंसी डिक्लेयर की गई थी उसका मेन मोटिव ये था कि हाई कोर्ट और इलाहाबाद में इंदिरा गांधी केस हारती हैं, उसके बाद फिर पावर ऑफ सेंट्रलाइजेशन जो था उसको अपने पास रखने के लिए इंदिरा गांधी और संजय गांधी ने पूरी कोशिश की और इमरजेंसी को डिक्लेयर किया गया था। और आज 45 साल के बाद, अराउंड 45 ईयर्स के बाद भी अगर आज आप देखें तो जो रूट है उसका, रूट कॉज है उस चीज़ का, वो आज यही है कि पावर ऑफ सेंट्रलाइजेशन। जिस तरीके से उस दौर में भी माँ बेटे अपने पास पावर के लिए सारी चीज़ें की गई थी, आज भी अगर हम देखें तो जो दो लोग हैं मोदी और शाह, उन लोगों ने एक तरह से अनडिक्लेयर इमरजेंसी का माहौल बना दिया पूरे मुल्क के अंदर। आप देखें पिछले 7-8 सालों में जिस तरीके से एक डेमोक्रेटिक कंट्री में डेमोक्रेटिक इंस्टीट्यूशन का मिसयूज किया गया, हर तरफ पावर का मिसयूज किया गया सिर्फ इसलिए कि पावर ऑफ सेंट्रलाइजेशन इनके पास हो। हम बात करें तो आप देखिए पिछले 7-8 सालों में जिस तरीके से जो मेन इंस्टीट्यूट है डेमोक्रेटिक कंट्री के, अगर हम बात करें सबसे पहले तो इलेक्शन कमीशन की अगर हम बात करें तो इलेक्शन कमीशन को कहीं ना कहीं इलेक्शन मिनिस्ट्री बना दिया गया। जिस तरीके से उसका मिसयूज किया जाता है इलेक्शन को जीतने के लिए, इलेक्शन अपने फेवर में कन्वर्ट कराने के लिए। अभी मैं बात करूं रिसेंट की, यूपी के अंदर जिला पंचायत के इलेक्शन थे और इस जिला पंचायत के इलेक्शन के दौरान जिस तरीके से चीज़ों का इस्तेमाल किया गया और हम लोग भी काफ़ी एक्टिव थे उसमें, उस इलेक्शन के दौरान कई सीटों पे हम लोग ने कैंडिडेट भी अपने खड़े किए थे, इलेक्शन लड़वाया, लोगों को बहुत करीब से देखने का मौका मिला। तो आप ये सोच लीजिए कि जो इलेक्शन कमीशन के जो पोस्ट होल्डर्स थे, जो ऑफिसर्स थे, वो गवर्नमेंट के हैंड बन करके काम कर रहे थे। इस तरीके से उन लोगों ने काम किया और कई सीटों पर यूपी के अंदर जो इलेक्शन रिजल्ट है वो जानबूझ करके जो हमारी प्रेजेंट गवर्नमेंट है उसके फेवर में रिजल्ट कन्वर्ट करने की कोशिश की गई और जो कैंडिडेट थे उनकी कोई बात नहीं सुनी गई। इस तरीके से अगर हम मीडिया हाउसेस की बात करें, जिस तरीके से आज मीडिया हाउसेस के अंदर कॉर्पोरेट वर्ल्ड का इंटरफेयर है, वो इस बात को बताता है कि जो पब्लिक के इश्यूज हैं, जो पब्लिक की जेन्युइन चीज़ें हैं, वो लोगों तक नहीं पहुंच पाती और जो लोग भी पहुंचाने की कोशिश करते हैं उनको डराने धमकाने के लिए एजेंसीज का यूज़ किया जाता है और इस तरह की कोशिशें की जाती हैं। अभी हम बात करें इस तरीके से जो पेंडेमिक है, कोविड-19 कोरोना पेंडेमिक जो है, इसके दौरान इसको कहीं ना कहीं आपदा को अवसर बनाया गया। जो लोग ये बात कह रहे थे खुल करके कि आप इस आपदा को अवसर बनाइए, और वाकई उन लोगों ने इस चीज़ को प्रूव किया। उन लोगों ने आपदा को अवसर बनाया। जिस तरीके से इस दौरान एक स्टेट को पुलिस स्टेट में कन्वर्ट किया गया, जिस तरीके से हर तरफ पुलिस का दमन किया गया, जो वॉइसेस थी, जो डिसेंट थे, जो डिसेंट को जिंदा कर रहे थे, उनको दबाने की कोशिश की गई। और पिछले अगर आप देखें पिछले 7-8 सालों में 2014 के बाद से एक रिपोर्ट भी मौजूद है, 2019 में एक इंटरनेशनल रिपोर्ट थी जिसने इस बात को बताया कि इंडिया पूरी दुनिया के अंदर इंडिया जो है वो तीसरे नंबर पर है जिसने अपने स्टूडेंट एक्टिविज्म को क्रश किया, कहीं ना कहीं स्टूडेंट लीडरशिप को क्रश किया, स्टूडेंट्स के मूवमेंट को क्रश किया। अगर मैं बात करूं, और लगातार टारगेट इसलिए किया गया कि जो अनडिक्लेयर्ड इमरजेंसी है इनकी, जो पिछले कई सालों से मुल्क के अंदर है, उस चीज़ को इस हमारी जो प्रेजेंट गवर्नमेंट है उसको ये पता है कि उसके बीच में अगर कोई रोड़ा बन सकता है, कोई रोड़ा बन रहा है, उसको रोकने की और रोकने की कोई कोशिश कर सकता है, तो वो सिर्फ और सिर्फ इस मुल्क के स्टूडेंट्स ग्रुप हैं, कैंपस एक्टिविज्म है, स्टूडेंट्स एक्टिविज्म है, वही लोग इसको रोक सकते हैं और उनके बीच में रोड़ा बन रहे हैं। तो इसलिए 2014 के बाद से लगातार ये कोशिश की गई कि जितने भी स्टूडेंट मूवमेंट हैं, जितने भी स्टूडेंट लीडर्स हैं, जितने भी स्टूडेंट एक्टिविस्ट हैं, जो कैंपस एक्टिविस्ट हैं, उनको टारगेट किया गया। अगर आप देखिए 2014 में शुरुआत होती है जादवपुर यूनिवर्सिटी के स्टूडेंट्स के साथ। उन लोगों ने जो वहाँ पर अपने वाइस चांसलर को हटाने के लिए प्रोटेस्ट की शुरुआत की थी, और वो इसलिए थोपा गया था कि वो इनकी आइडियोलॉजी को वहाँ पर जाकर के थोपें, वहाँ जोर जबरदस्ती करें। उसके बाद आप देख लीजिए 2015 में जिस तरीके से FTI पुणे का जो प्रोटेस्ट था गजेंद्र चौहान के खिलाफ, जो उनका अपॉइंटमेंट हुआ था वहाँ पर। उसके बाद हम आगे बढ़ते हैं 2016 में जिस तरीके से रोहित वेमुला के साथ किया गया हैदराबाद में, और उसके जो मेन एक्यूज थे उसमें वो जिस ग्रुप से बिलोंग करते थे ABVP, वो मौजूदा गवर्नमेंट के स्टूडेंट विंग है, जिन लोगों ने उसके साथ ज्यादती की, जुल्म किया, उसको सुसाइड करने पर मजबूर किया। फिर उसी 2016 में जिस तरीके से JNU को टारगेट किया गया, वहाँ के स्टूडेंट लीडर्स को टारगेट किया गया, एक फेक नैरेटिव बनाया गया डॉक्टर वीडियो के थ्रू, पूरे मुल्क के अंदर एक अनारकी फैलाई गई। उसके आगे अगर हम बढ़ें 2017 में आप देखिए DU के अंदर जिस तरह से रामजस कॉलेज का जो केस था, वो भी ABVP की देन थी, मौजूदा हुकूमत की स्टूडेंट विंग थी। नजीब का मसला आपके सामने है। उसके बाद हम आते हैं 2020 में जब CA NRC का प्रोटेस्ट, जो बड़ा रिवॉल्यूशन था, एक बड़ा आज़ाद हिंदुस्तान में या इंडिपेंडेंस के बाद सबसे बड़ा मूवमेंट अगर कोई खड़ा हुआ तो CNRC का था, जिसकी शुरुआत जामिया मिलिया इस्लामिया दिल्ली से होती है, और वो AMU होते हुए पूरे हिंदुस्तान के अंदर, पूरे मुल्क के अंदर एक अलग मूवमेंट बन जाता है। उसने हिंदुस्तान की हुकूमत की कहीं ना कहीं कमर तोड़ के रख दी। ये सारे लोग अंडर प्रेशर थे, मगर उसको आप देखिए किस तरीके से वायलेंटली क्रश करने की कोशिश की। 15 दिसंबर का वाकया सबके सामने, जिस तरीके से जामिया के अंदर एट्रोसिटीज की गई, जिस तरीके से AMU के अंदर एट्रोसिटी की गई, ब्रूटल अटैक किया गया वहां के स्टूडेंट्स के ऊपर, और इस तरह से ट्रीट किया गया जैसे वो स्टूडेंट नहीं कोई क्रिमिनल, कोई टेररिस्ट ग्रुप था। और उसके बाद जिस तरीके से मुकदमे किए गए स्टूडेंट्स ग्रुप के ऊपर, वो आपके सामने है। उसके बाद फिर जब ये पैंडेमिक आया, कोविड-19 की वेव आई, पूरे मुल्क के अंदर लॉकडाउन लगा, तो जो गवर्नमेंट की एजेंसीज थी उसको जो ये कोशिश करनी चाहिए थी कि हम इसको लड़ाइयों को लड़ें, किस तरीके से हम इसको काउंटर करें, किस तरीके से इसको रोकें, तो उन तमाम चीजों को रोक कर रात के अंधेरों में स्टूडेंट एक्टिविस्टों की गिरफ्तारियां शुरू की गई। पूरे मुल्क के अंदर से, दिल्ली के अंदर से, लखनऊ के अंदर से, अलीगढ़ के अंदर से। एक हमारी बहन मौजूद भी है इसमें, इस हमारे वेबिनार में, मीटिंग में सफूरा जरगर हैं। इस तरीके से उनकी गिरफ्तारी की गई, उनको अरेस्ट किया गया। इस तरह के तमाम लोग हैं, मैं बहुत सारे लोगों का नाम भी नहीं ले सकता। अलीगढ़ मुस्लिम यूनिवर्सिटी के अंदर से कई स्टूडेंट्स को गिरफ्तार किया गया, और लगातार ये चीजें हुई। और उसके बाद आप देखिए कि जो उनके खिलाफ आवाज उठाता है, जो उनके खिलाफ बोलने की कोशिश करता है, उसको इस तरीके से टारगेट किया जाता है, UAPA का मिसयूज किया जाता है, NSA लगाया जाता है, देशद्रोह का मुकदमा लगाया जाता है। मतलब ये तमाम मुकदमे, ये तमाम धाराएं ऐसी हो गई हैं कि जैसे लगता ही नहीं, मतलब जिससे आदमी तबर्रुक बांटता है, जिस तरह मंदिरों में तबर्रुक बांटते हैं, उस तरीके से ये धाराएं बांटी जा रही है। 124A बांटा जा रहा है, UAPA बांटा जा रहा है। जिस बात को बताता है कि गवर्नमेंट को ये पता है कि हमारी जो मोनोपोली है, हमारी जो अनडिक्लेयर और एमरजेंसी है, हमारी जो ऑटोक्रेटिक अप्रोच है, हमारी जो मोनोक्रेटिक अप्रोच है, उस चीज के खिलाफ अगर कोई रोड़ा बन रहा है तो वो सिर्फ स्टूडेंट लीडरशिप है। और 2014 के बाद पूरे मुल्क के अंदर अगर किसी ने अपोजिशन का रोल अदा किया है, अपोजिशन का किरदार अदा किया, तो मुल्क के स्टूडेंट लीडर्स हैं। तमाम लोग जो इस पैनल में मौजूद भी हैं, वो तमाम लोग जो यहाँ नहीं मौजूद हैं, उन तमाम लोगों ने ये साबित किया है, ये प्रूफ किया है। अलीगढ़ के सिनेरियो में बात करें, अलीगढ़ में तकरीबन 12,000 लड़कों को तकलीफ किए गए, और वो सारे तमाम स्टूडेंट्स हैं जो लोग यूनिवर्सिटी के अंदर अपना कैरियर बनाने के लिए आए, तमाम लोगों को तकलीफ किए गए। दिल्ली के अंदर जामिया के अंदर मुकदमे किए गए, गिरफ्तारियां की गई, JNU से गिरफ्तारियां की। ये इस बात को बताता है तो वो स्टूडेंट्स हैं। और अभी प्रेजेंट टाइम की हम बात करें, उत्तर प्रदेश की बात करें, आप देखिए कि उत्तर प्रदेश के अंदर जिस तरीके से एक खास तबके को टारगेट किया जा रहा है, और सिर्फ उत्तर प्रदेश के अंदर नहीं, पूरे मुल्क के अंदर जिस तरीके से आए दिन मॉब लिंचिंग के केसेस सामने आ रहे हैं, उस पर कोई बोलने को तैयार नहीं है, कोई गवर्नमेंट का ऑफिशियल उस पर एक बयान देने को तैयार नहीं है। ये मुल्क के अंदर एक माहौल जानबूझ करके बनाया जा रहा है, सिर्फ इसलिए कि जो मेजॉरिटेरियन है उसको खुश करने के लिए, उसको इस बात को बताने के लिए कि आप देखिए कि हमारी हुकूमत में किस तरीके से क्या हो रहा है। और इस चीज को समझने की जरूरत है कि आए दिन केसेस सामने आ रहे हैं। अब मॉब लिंचिंग तो हो ही रही थी मुल्क के अंदर, तकरीबन 100 से ऊपर मॉब लिंचिंग हुई। अब एक नया ट्रेंड शुरू हुआ है, पुलिस कस्टडी में जो मौतें हो रही हैं, कस्टडियल डेथ जो हो रही हैं। अभी मेरा ताल्लुक होम टाउन आजमगढ़ से है। हमारे आजमगढ़ से एक बंदे को यहाँ से अकबरपुर अम्बेडकर नगर की पुलिस उठा करके ले जाती है घर से, और 24 घंटे के बाद उसको पता चलता है कि पुलिस कस्टडी में उसकी डेथ हो गई। इस तरीके से उसको 3rd डिग्री दिया गया, टॉर्चर किया गया। अभी उन्नाव का केस आपके सामने आया। ये खास करके उत्तर प्रदेश के अंदर ये चीजें आम हो चुकी हैं, और कार्रवाई के नाम पे, एक्शन के नाम पे उन पे कोई एक्शन नहीं लिया जाता। ये कहीं ना कहीं गवर्नमेंट ने अपना एक एजेंडा बना लिया है कि जो मुल्क की माइनॉरिटी है, खास करके जो मुस्लिम तबका है, जिस कम्युनिटी थी, जिस तबके से हम लोग का ताल्लुक है, उसको टारगेट करो और मेजोरिटी के अंदर, मेजोरिटेरियन के अंदर एक माहौल बनाए, एक नैरेटिव डेवलप करें कि देखिए हमारी वजह से ये लोग कितने परेशान हैं। तो इस चीज के खिलाफ हम लोगों को आना होगा, एक प्लानिंग करनी होगी। जैसे ये पेंडेमिक खत्म होता है, जो मूवमेंट एक खड़ा किया था सारे पूरे मुल्क के अंदर, वो स्टूडेंट लीडर्स थे, स्टूडेंट एक्टिविस्ट थे, उसको फिर से जिंदा करने की जरूरत है। फिर से यूनाइट होकर के इस लड़ाई के खिलाफ लड़ने की जरूरत है। अगर आज हम लोग खामोश बैठे तो आप यकीन मानिए कि इससे बुरे हालात हो जाएंगे, फिर कोई बोलने वाला नहीं होगा, कोई लड़ने वाला नहीं होगा, और बुरे हालात हो जाएंगे। और ये प्लानिंग ही इनकी ये थी, इन लोगों ने इसीलिए इस दौरान जो लोग भी वॉइस ऑफ डिसेंट को जिंदा कर रहे थे, जो लोग भी इनकी ज्यादती के खिलाफ, इनके जुल्म के खिलाफ मजबूती से बोल रहे थे, उन तमाम लोगों को लगातार टारगेट करने की कोशिश हो रही है। अभी आप देखिए गाजियाबाद का जो इशू था, गाजियाबाद की मॉब लिंचिंग के बाद जिस तरीके से एफआईआर की गई हमारे एक्टिविस्टों के खिलाफ, ट्विटर पे जिन लोगों ने ट्वीट किया था, ये इस बात को बता रहा है कि आप मतलब बोल भी नहीं सकते, आप सांस भी नहीं ले सकते। उत्तर प्रदेश के अंदर इसी तरह का माहौल बनाया गया है। जो इस गवर्नमेंट के खिलाफ बोलता है उस पर मुकदमे दर्ज किए जाते हैं, और बहुत से लोगों ने उस पर बोला भी। बहुत से आप देखे होंगे ट्विटर के अंदर वो चीजें चल रही हैं कि किस तरीके से लोगों को टारगेट किया जा रहा है। तो इस चीज को हमें समझने की जरूरत है। और मुझे लगता है कि बहुत सारी बातें हमसे पहले हमारे बहन सफूरा ने, उससे पहले अनीस भाई ने, और उससे पहले रामपुरियानी जी ने बातें रखी हैं, और आगे भी हमारे बहुत से लोग हैं इस पे बात रखेंगे। तो जो एक प्रोग्राम की बात हो रही थी, कॉमन मिनिमम प्रोग्राम की बात हो रही थी, अगर सारे लोग मिल करके उस पर एक लाइन ऑफ एक्शन बनाते हैं कि कुछ दिनों में जो हालात थोड़े से नॉर्मल हो जाए, तो हमें इस चीज के खिलाफ फिर से यूनाइट होकर के एक मजबूत आवाज बनना है और बनानी है, ताकि जो डर और भय और दहशत का माहौल कायम किया जा रहा है, इस तरह का जो माहौल कायम किया जा रहा है कि आप खुल के सांस भी नहीं ले सकते, आप खुल के बोल भी नहीं सकते, वो चीजें खत्म हो, ताकि वो लोगों के अंदर फिर से वो हिम्मत पैदा हो, वो जोश पैदा हो, ताकि इन ज्यादतियों के खिलाफ बोल सकें, लड़ सकें। उस पर हमें काम करने की जरूरत है। और अभी बात हो रही थी, आप देखिए उमर गौतम साहब की, अभी उन पे आरोप है, एटीएस ने या एनआईए ने या पुलिस ने जो आरोप लगाया, उन पे ये आरोप लगाया कि पैसा देकर के लोगों का धर्म परिवर्तन कराते थे। अभी इंक्वायरी चल रही है, अभी उस पर जांच चल रही है, अभी डिक्लेयर नहीं हुआ। और उससे पहले जिस तरीके से उत्तर प्रदेश की हुकूमत ने ये कहा कि हम उनके ऊपर एनएसए लगाएंगे, उनकी प्रॉपर्टी को जब्त कर लेंगे, मतलब मजाक बना के रख दिया है। आप देखिए इस तरीके से ज्यादती की जा रही है, अभी उन पे आरोप डिक्लेयर नहीं हुआ और उन लोगों पे कोई एक्शन नहीं होता। आप देखिए सोशल मीडिया भरा पड़ा है, यूट्यूब पे, फेसबुक पे, ट्विटर पर उठा के देखिए, आए दिन वीडियो ट्रेंड करती हैं, सोशल मीडिया पे फ्लोट करती हैं, किस तरीके से हिंदुस्तान की कम्युनिटी को खुलेआम थ्रेट किया जाता है। खुलेआम ये बात की जाती है कि उनके गर्दनों को काट देंगे अगर वो फला नारा नहीं लगाएंगे। उन पे कोई एक्शन नहीं होता, उन पे कोई कार्रवाई नहीं होती। क्या हिंदुस्तान के अंदर मुसलमान होना जुर्म है? क्या हिंदुस्तान के अंदर दलित होना जुर्म है? क्या हिंदुस्तान के अंदर अदर जो हमारी बैकवर्ड कास्ट है वो होना जुर्म है? ये इस बात को बताता है कि इनका सिर्फ एक एजेंडा है, अपनी नाकामियों को छुपाने के लिए कोई भी जब भी हुकूमत गिरती है तो एक खास तबके को ला करके टारगेट कर दिया जाता है, खास तबके पे ला करके पूरी मीडिया बैठा दिया जाता है, वो सिर्फ उस चीजों को टेलीकास्ट करता है, वो एक सिनेरियो बनाया जाता है, एक माहौल बनाया जाता है, और जो हमारी पब्लिक है, जो हमारी आवाम है, उस इश्यूज से भटक करके सिर्फ उस पे हो जाती है, रिलीजन की आपस में लड़ाई हो जाती है। तो इस चीज को समझने की जरूरत है। और इस शेर के साथ मैं अपनी बात को खत्म करूंगा, टाइम बहुत हो गया, बहुत से लोगों ने ऑलरेडी बहुत टाइम ले लिया है, हमारे बहुत से और लोग बाकी हैं। इस शेर से मैं अपनी बात को खत्म करूंगा क्योंकि मेरा ताल्लुक भी अलीगढ़ से है, कि वो मर्द ही क्या जो डर जाए हालात के खूनी मंजर से, वो मर्द ही क्या जो डर जाए हालात के खूनी मंजर से, उस दौर में जीना लाजिम है जिस दौर में जीना मुश्किल हो। और हम आतिशे सोजा में भी हक बात कहेंगे, कुंदन की तरह दहर में ताबिंदा रहेंगे, और तारीख बताती है कि हर दौर सितम में हम जिंदा थे, हम जिंदा हैं, हम जिंदा रहेंगे। बहुत बहुत शुक्रिया। वेरी थैंक्स फॉर इनवाइटिंग अस। थैंक यू कैंपस फ्रंट ऑफ इंडिया ऑर्गेनाइजिंग अ wonderful webinar and talk and dialogue on the anniversary of the emergency. Thank you.
Thank you, brother. Inshallah, we will live here. So I'd like to remind upcoming speakers that since our schedule is a little late, if it would be great if you can stick on to the given time. I would like to invite Jayan Jignasu, who is the executive member of Rashtriya Janata Dal.
जी नमस्कार। बहुत साधुवाद कि आज आपातकाल और फिर आज के दौर के अघोषित आपातकाल पर हम सब लोग आपस में चर्चा कर रहे हैं। और पूर्व के सभी वक्ताओं की इस बात पर एक राय थी कि वो एक ज़माना था जबकि संविधान प्रदत्त कायदे के तहत इस देश पर इमरजेंसी इम्पोज किया गया और श्रीमती इंदिरा गांधी ने उस वक्त कहा था कि परिंदा भी पर नहीं मारेगा, और सच में कोई परिंदा बाहर नहीं आया और फिर इंसान बाहर आ गए और डेमोक्रेसी को रिस्टोर किया। लोगों ने जबरदस्त मुखालफत की। बहुत सारे राष्ट्रीय नेता और जिले और ब्लॉक लेवल के पॉलिटिकल एक्टिविस्ट सीधे सीधे पुलिस के साथ लड़ते भिड़ते रहे और सरकार के इशारे पर लोगों को रात में ही नजरबंद किया गया। लेकिन यह बात भी रेखांकित करने वाली है कि जहां एक्स्ट्रा कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनल अथॉरिटी के रूप में प्रधानमंत्री के पुत्र उस वक्त तरह तरह के काम कर रहे थे, आज तो जो इस देश में 1925 का संगठन है और जो खुद को कल्चरल ऑर्गेनाइजेशन कहता है, उसके लोग सरकार के संरक्षण में जहां तहां मजलूमों को सताने का काम करते हैं। इस देश में इंसानों की कोई, उसकी जान की कोई कीमत नहीं, लेकिन मानवेतर प्राणियों का हवाला देकर उनकी पूजा, उनकी इबादत का एक भोंडा प्रदर्शन करके लोगों के किचन तक यह सरकार घुसाई है। और जो कोई भी गुंडे हैं उनको सत्ता का सीधा सीधा संरक्षण प्राप्त। और इसी जमाने में हमने जुल्मत और ज्यादती और सितम की इंतहा देखी है। अखलाक का कोई गुनाह नहीं, पहलू खान का कोई गुनाह नहीं, लेकिन हमने उन सबको अपनी जान को इस तरह से उन गुंडों के आगे असमय देते देखा है। और यह जो घुटन का माहौल है, ऐसा नहीं है कि इसका प्रतिरोध नहीं हो रहा है, हो रहा है। और इस बात को भी हमें नहीं भूलना चाहिए कि बरसों बरस से जो लोग प्रखर वक्ता रहे हैं वो शालीन श्रोता भी बने और बिना नाक मुंह सिकोड़े हुए इस देश की जो एक बड़ी आबादी, जो अकलियत है, जो दलित है, जो पिछड़ा है, जो आदिवासी है, पसमानदा है, उनकी आवाज को सुनी जाए। और न सिर्फ सुनी जाए बल्कि उनके जो दुख दर्द है, उनको जो मार्जिन में रखा गया है लंबे समय से, और जब उनकी मेन स्ट्रीमिंग होती है, जब वो अपने लोकस से, अपने तजुर्बे के आधार पर अपनी बात इस जमाने से सुनाते हैं, तो बहुत लोग उसमें असहज होने लगते हैं। हमने देखा है कि रोहित वेमुला को किस तरह से इंस्टीट्यूशनली उसका मर्डर किया गया और देश के तमाम कैंपसों से जब उनके न्याय के लिए आवाज उठने लगी, कई तरह की पॉलिटिकल पार्टी और प्रोग्रेसिव फोर्सेस ने पार्लियामेंट के अंदर सरकार को घेरने का काम किया। सरकार बैकफुट पर आई, तो उसी बीच में जेएनयू को एक तरह से यहाँ पर हंगामा खड़ा कराया गया और उसमें आज भी अनआइडेंटिफाइड जो लोग हैं, जिसको सरकार पकड़ने में नाकाम रही है, और जिसकी ढाल बनाकर इस पूरे कैंपस का जो जमहूरी और जो इंक्लूसिव कैरेक्टर है उसको खत्म करने में कोई कोर कसर सरकार ने नहीं छोड़ी। अलीगढ़ मुस्लिम यूनिवर्सिटी को लगातार छेड़ना, वहां पर बिना बात के किसी बात को इशू बनाकर और उसको मैग्नीफाई करके दिखाना, वहां के जो देश भर के लोग और जिसने एक से बढ़कर एक नेशन बिल्डर को प्रोड्यूस किया, उसको अटैक करके वहां के कैंपस का जो अमन चैन है उसको डिस्टर्ब करने का काम इस देश में जो उपराष्ट्रपति हुए और एक बड़े शिक्षाविद और वहां के वाइस चांसलर भी रहे हामिद अंसारी साहब के ऊपर में जिस तरह की टिप्पणी इस देश के वजीर आजम करते रहे, ये सब कुछ एक सिम्टम है कि हम जिन लोगों को आज हुकूमत में देख रहे हैं उनको इस देश की जो लॉन्ग चेरिस्ड कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनल ट्रेडिशन है, जो पार्लियामेंट्री कल्चर है, उसमें कोई बहुत यकीन नहीं है। और कभी कभी तो ऐसा लगता है कि जिन लोगों का कोई कंट्रीब्यूशन नहीं था जंग आज़ादी में, उन लोगों के लिए ये डेमोक्रेसी ही मुसीबत बन गई है मानो, और वो इसको डाइजेस्ट नहीं कर पा रहे। और जो लोग आज सत्ता में हैं वो लोग बार बार इमरजेंसी का हवाला देते हैं कि उस दौर में हम जेल में रहे, उस दौर में जेपी के साथ ये हुआ, उस दौर में जनता पार्टी जब बनी इमरजेंसी खत्म होने के बाद और सारे फोर्सेस मिले और उसमें जनसंघ के लोग भी, और पहली गैर कांग्रेसी सरकार के गठन में लेफ्ट का भी समर्थन और जनसंघ का, मतलब जनसंघ तो जनता पार्टी में ही मर्ज कर गई, तो हर तरह के लोग थे वहां। और वाजपेयी एक्सटर्नल अफेयर्स मिनिस्टर बन गए, आडवाणी सूचना प्रसारण मंत्री हो, और इस तरह के लोग। लेकिन तब भी मधुलिमय ने आरएसएस को एक्सपोज करने का काम किया था। कभी मिनिस्टर नहीं रहे, 4 बार एमपी रहे, 2 बार मुंगेर से, 2 बार बांका से, और वो बार बार चौधरी चरण सिंह जी से भी कहते थे कि मतलब ये कैसी बात है कि आदमी जनता पार्टी का भी मेंबर रहेगा और आरएसएस का भी मेंबर रहेगा, और उस दोहरी सदस्यता के नाम पर उस सरकार को गिराने का काम हुआ। और उस वक्त जो पैर पसार रहे थे लोग, वो आज इस रूप में गांव गांव गली चौक चौराहे पर चले गए हैं कि बिहार जिसको दंगे फसाद से बहुत हद तक मुक्त रखने में 89 के भागलपुर राइट के बाद लालू प्रसाद ने कामयाबी पाई थी अपनी सूझबूझ के चलते, वहां पर पहली दफे बिहार के कैपिटल में गोडसे जिंदाबाद के रामनवमी के समय में 2 लाख ऑनलाइन तलवारों की खरीद करो। पहली मर्तबा वहां पर स्टेशन के पास जो कश्मीरी भाई हैं उनकी दुकानों को उजाड़ा गया, और ये सब वहां पर भाजपा और जेडीयू की सरकार के गठजोड़ में होता रहा। ये कोई 1-2 मिसाल नहीं, बल्कि पूरे देश के अंदर जहां कहीं भी न्याय के हक में, जमहूरियत की हिमायत में आवाज उठती है, उन आवाजों को बहुत ही तरीके से सरकारी मशीनरी का दुरुपयोग करते हुए कुचल दिया जाता है। हमारे बहुत से साथी जेल में हैं, कुछ लोग बाहर आए हैं, कुछ लोगों को जमानत मिली है। इस कोरोना के समय में बुजुर्ग से बुजुर्ग लोगों को कैद खाने में रखा गया है, और ये कोई डेमोक्रेटिक सरकार नहीं करती। जिसके पास लोक लाज है, जिसके पास लोक लिहाज है, वो इस तरह के काम नहीं करती। लेकिन जिस तरह की ताकतें आज हैं, ठीक कह रहे थे पहले के वक्ता, कि उनसे आप कोई मर्सी की उम्मीद नहीं कर सकते। और आप अगर मुखालफत की एक शालीन तहजीब के साथ काम करते हैं तो आपको उन सब बातों के लिए भी तैयार रहना चाहिए जो आपके हमारे पुरखे एक जमाने से भोगते रहे। आज सबसे ज्यादा बेरोजगारी दर है, लेकिन उस पर बात नहीं होती। मीडिया का एक बड़ा तबका जो डेमोक्रेसी का फोर्थ पिलर, वो रात दिन इस सरकार के शान में कसीदे काढ़े रहता है, उसके आगे भारतनाट्यम और भांगड़ा करता रहता है, और उसकी कोई अकाउंटेबिलिटी ही जो लगता है कि नहीं यहाँ के जनता के प्रति, यहाँ के लोगों के प्रति। तो ये सारे के सारे जो हमारे आगे नुमाया हो रही हैं चीजें, वो हमें इस बात के लिए इत्तला करती है और इस बात के लिए आगाह भी करती है, जो कभी गर्सोल ने कहा, एटर्नल विजिलेंस इज द प्राइस ऑफ लिबर्टी। बहुत विजिलेंट रहने की जरूरत है। और तमाम तरह की रायें हमारे बीच से ही उठती हैं, उनमें से कुछ पर सहमति होती है, कुछ पर हम एक मत नहीं हो पाते हैं, लेकिन बावजूद इसके हम सामूहिकता में चीज़ों को समग्रता में, टोटलिटी में देखने की कोशिश करते हैं, और फिर एक विवेक के साथ हम लोग आगे बढ़ने की कोशिश करते हैं। सबके अपने अपने अनुभव हैं, लेकिन इससे कोई इनकार नहीं करेगा कि पिछले 6-7 वर्षों में जितने डेमोक्रेटिक राइट्स पर हमले हुए हैं, इससे पहले कभी नहीं देखा गया। उस इमरजेंसी के दौर में भी नहीं जो इंदिरा गांधी ने लागू किया था। वो कोई 24 घंटे टीवी में नहीं दिन भर नजर आती, लेकिन यहाँ तो हर बात को इवेंट बनाकर और फिर बहुत कारुणिक आंसू बहाकर लोगों को स्वे कर लिया जाता है। हम ये नहीं कहते हैं कि माइंड्स की रिगिंग हो गई है, लेकिन मेजॉरिटी ऑफ माइंड्स जो इस देश का है, इस देश के लोग हैं, उसको ऑक्युपाई तो कर ही लिया गया है, और ये बहुत स्ट्रक्चर्ड वे में हुआ है। इस देश की मीडिया का 50% हिस्सा भी अगर थोड़ा सा अपने दायित्व का निर्वहन करने लगे तो इस सरकार को जाने में देर नहीं लगेगी, क्योंकि वही बातें वहां तक पहुंचती हैं आम आवाम तक, जिसको कि ये लोग झूठ को बार बार सच के रूप में परोसने का काम करते हैं, और लोग इनके बातों में आ जाते हैं। मुझे तो यही लगता है कि एकमात्र समाधान यह है कि इस सरकार को कैसे हटाया जाए। बाकी चीजें तो ऐसा लगता है कि टुकड़ों में हम अगर देखने की कोशिश करते हैं तो फौरी तौर पर कोई राहत नजर आती है, लेकिन बगैर इसको बदले हुए हमें कोई बहुत तस्कीन की उम्मीद नहीं है। आज ही विश्वनाथ प्रताप सिंह की भी जयंती है। इस देश के ऐसे पहले प्रधानमंत्री रहे जिन्होंने अपने कैबिनेट में आजाद भारत का एकमात्र होम मिनिस्टर जो है वो माइनॉरिटी सेक्शन से बनाया, मुफ्ती मोहम्मद साहब। और ये एक भरोसा देने की बात थी कि इस देश के जो अहम ओहदे हैं सरकार के, वो सिर्फ जो है वो अल्पसंख्यक कल्याण मंत्रालय ही नहीं संभालेंगे, बल्कि इस देश की जो विधि व्यवस्था है और जो आंतरिक सुरक्षा और आंतरिक शांति, उसके लिए भी उन पर भरोसा किया जाएगा। इस देश में हमने कई राष्ट्रपति उपराष्ट्रपति जो है अल्पसंख्यक समुदाय से देखें, कई गवर्नर कई सूबों के बने, उपराष्ट्रपति हुए, लेकिन प्रधानमंत्री इस देश के वजीर आजम के लिए आज तक किसी अल्पसंख्यक व्यक्ति पर इस देश के जनमानस ने शायद यकीन नहीं किया है वहां तक पहुंचाने में उनको। और मैं समझता हूं कि अमेरिका के व्हाइट हाउस में एक ब्लैक को बिठाया गया, लेकिन हमने आज तक इस देश में जो सबसे पुराने जनतंत्र होने का दावा करता है और खंड खंड पाखंड से भरा हुआ जो समाज है, जब तक हम डिसीजन मेकिंग बॉडी में, आज मीडिया में महज 4% मुसलमान, महज 4% ओबीसी के लोग, महज 4% क्रिश्चियन लोग हैं। महिलाओं की संख्या थोड़ी सी बेहतर आपको जो है इंग्लिश मीडिया में है, और रीजनल लैंग्वेजेस में तो और भी हालत बदतर है। जब तक ये सारे इंस्टीट्यूशंस जो हैं, पार्लियामेंट और स्टेट असेंबलीज में बैठने की संख्या तय है, वहां 543 से ज्यादा लोग नहीं जा सकते, लेकिन एक ऐसी सरकार जिसने एक भी माइनॉरिटी में मतलब मुसलमान को नहीं दिया टिकट, और वो कहती है कि हम सबका साथ सबका विकास करेंगे, तो इससे बड़ा छलावा और कुछ नहीं हो सकता है। जिस वक्त सीए एनआरसी वगैरह का प्रोटेस्ट चल रहा था, और मैं आपको बताऊं जब ये एक्ट बना भी नहीं था, कैब था उस वक्त, बिल एक हाउस में टेबल भी नहीं हुआ था, हम लोग पटना में थे, वहीं पर हमारी पार्टी का नेशनल कन्वेंशन था, और अगले ही दिन 11 बजे के आसपास जेपी गोलंबर के सामने वहाँ के लीडर अपोजिशन बैठे थे अपने कई एमपी मतलब राज्यसभा कई एमएलएज के साथ और पुराने लीडर के साथ, और फिर गांधी की प्रतिमा के आगे भी गए। और हमको याद है कि लखविनिया बेगूसराय हो या शांति बाग हो गया का या स्टेशन के पास हो, पटना स्टेशन के पास, या मसौढ़ी पटना, या फिर आपको सिवान कलेक्ट्रेट के पास, मारर खगड़िया में, मुस्कीपुर गोगड़ी में, कई जगह हम लोग गए और वहाँ पर जो कुछ प्रतिरोध चल रहा था, जामिया में, तुर्कमान गेट में, बुराड़ी में, जामा मस्जिद, और हमने देखा कि फिर कोरोना के वक्त जो है वो सब कुछ छिन्न भिन्न हो गया। लेकिन आज भी किसान आंदोलन जो चल रहा है उस पर कोई सरकार की निगाह नहीं, और लगातार कुचलने का काम ही हुआ है इस देश में। तो इस इमरजेंसी से हम लोग तब तक नहीं शायद पार पा सकेंगे जब तक हम इस बात को ना मान लें कि यह सरकार आई ही थी इसी एजेंडे के साथ, मुसलमान को टाइट करो, रिजर्वेशन को डाइल्यूट करो। इस देश में जब तक भागीदारी का जो सवाल है, नुमाइंदगी का सवाल है, उसको हम संजीदगी से एड्रेस नहीं करेंगे तो शायद हम पूंछ पकड़ने का काम करेंगे, उसका पूरा का पूरा जो है ढांचा, उसका शरीर, वो शायद बाहर निकल जाएगा। इसलिए हम लोग इस बात को न भूलें कि इसी सरकार जो यूपीएससी जिसकी सैंक्टिटी थी कि कम से कम वहाँ ठीक ठाक से रिक्रूटमेंट होता है, एक तो एलपीजी के बाद नौकरियां प्राइवेट सेक्टर्स में चली गई, और जो कुछ बची खुची रह गई उसमें भी देखिए कि लेटरल एंट्री के तहत ज्वाइंट सेक्रेटरी की, डेप्यूटी सेक्रेटरी की बड़े पैमाने पर बहाली, प्लानिंग कमीशन को खत्म कर दिया गया। तो इसलिए इन सारे सवालों को एक साथ जोड़ते हुए हम लोग आगे की दिशा में अगर कुछ सोच सकें तो मैं समझता हूँ कि इस दौर के भी बीतने में कोई वक्त नहीं लगेगा। मैं अब बिल्कुल इसको, अपनी बात को समाप्त करना चाहता हूँ। एक वक्तव्य जो 1935 में इस देश के बड़े एजुकेशनिस्ट डॉक्टर जाकिर हुसैन साहब ने काशी विद्यापीठ के कॉन्वोकेशन में कहा था, वो कुछ यूं है कि अगर काशी विद्यापीठ के स्नातक होने के नाते तुम अपना जीवन देश की सेवा में लगाना चाहते हो तो मुझे तुमसे बहुत कुछ कहना है। तुम जिस देश में यहाँ से निकलकर जा रहे हो वह बड़ा अभागा देश है, वह गुलामों का देश है, क्रूर परंपराओं का देश है, अविवेकी पुजारियों का देश है, भाई भाई में नफरत का देश है, बीमारियों का देश है, सस्ती मौत का देश है, गरीबी और अंधेरे का देश है, भूख और मुसीबत का देश है, यानी बड़ा कमबख्त देश है। लेकिन क्या कीजिए, तुम्हारा और हमारा देश है, इसी में जीना है और इसी में मरना है। इसलिए यह देश तुम्हारी हिम्मत के इम्तिहान, तुम्हारी शक्तियों के प्रयोग और तुम्हारे प्रेम के परख की जगह है। मैं समझता हूँ कि हमें बिगाड़ना इतना नहीं है जितना कि बनाना है। हमारे देश को हमारी गर्दनों से उबलते खून के धारे की जरूरत नहीं है, बल्कि हमारे माथे का बारहमासी बहने वाला दरकार है। जरूरत है काम की, खामोश और सच्चे काम की। हमारा भविष्य किसान की टूटी झोपड़ी, कारीगर की धुएं से काली छत और देहाती मदरसे व पाठशाला के इस छप्पर तले बंद और बिगड़ सकता है। राजनीतिक झगड़ों, कॉन्फ्रेंसों और कांग्रेसों में कल और परसों के किस्सों का फैसला हो सकता है। लेकिन जिन जगहों का मैंने नाम लिया है उनमें सदियों तक के लिए हमारी किस्मत का फैसला होगा। और इन जगहों का काम धीरज चाहता है और संयम। इसमें थकान भी ज्यादा है और कदर भी कम होती है, जल्दी नतीजा भी नहीं निकलता। हाँ, कोई देर तक धीरज रख सके तो जरूर फल मीठा मिलता है। आपस की घृणा और भ्रांति भी इस काम में कुछ अच्छे साथी साबित न होंगे, क्योंकि तुम्हारी राष्ट्रीयता के भवन की बुनियादें प्रेम और विश्वास की चट्टानों पर ही दृढ़ रह सकेंगी। सारांश यह है कि तुम्हारे सामने अपने जौहर दिखाने का अद्भुत अवसर है, मगर इस अवसर का उपयोग करने के लिए बहुत बड़े नैतिक बल की आवश्यकता है। जैसे मैमार होंगे वैसी ही इमारत होगी। बस अब विदा। तुम्हें तुम्हारी शिक्षा की उपाधि मुबारक हो। तुमसे बहुत सी आशाएं हैं, आशा है निराश नहीं करोगे। तो ये जाकिर हुसैन साहब का संदेश आज़ादी के भी पहले था। हमने अपने पुरखों के द्वारा जो यह मुल्क हमको सौंपा गया था, हम इस मुल्क को इस सरकार से वापस उसी रूप में पा सकें, यही कोशिश इस सरकार से इस देश को हम बचा ले जा सकें, मैं समझता हूँ कि हम लोग अपने फर्ज को अदा करने में कामयाब होंगे। बहुत शुक्रिया।
Fatima, I just wanted to say a few words, if you just give me a minute. Jayanji, I just wanted to say that you have said some really encouraging things, and especially जो आपने CA के बारे में बोला, that how आपने इसको oppose भी किया था, and how आपका solidarity रहा है all over Bihar जहाँ पे भी movement चला था. But I cannot stop myself from saying this, that when just before Miran Haider was arrested, and he's been a member of RJD, and आप आज भी अगर उनकी timeline देखेंगे तो it's filled with appreciation for talking about RJD, how he was working closely with Tejasvi ji and all of that. But in spite of that, RJD has not come in support of Miran Haider as it should have been. And as somebody who's closely, as a co-accused in the same case, I also want to say that in terms of even legal representation, there has not been much help. If as Muslims, as a community, we become part of an organization, then should we not, in terms of, when we talk about comradeship or allyship, should we not accept the kind of unconditional support that Miran Haider expected and should have got? But since you are here, I would urge you, with all my heart, and I would really like to urge you that it must be brought up in the RJD, that a member of RJD who really was the voice of the party in Jamia Millia Islamia, wherever he went, he raised the flag of RJD. Even through the entire CAA movement, he talked about, how RJD, and he spoke for RJD. And he was not at a small post, he was, I think he was the youth leader, youth wing ke president the wo. So in spite of that, the kind of abandonment that I see in his case, it's extremely disheartening. I would urge you to, take it up with your party, and, we could expect better support in that sense.
जी शुक्रिया साथी। मैं इसमें सिर्फ इतना आपसे कहूँ कि मिरान जी का जितनी भी हियरिंग हुई है, उसमें हमारी पार्टी के लीडर ने, सदर ने और लीडर अपोजिशन ने, यहाँ हमारे राज्यसभा के जो मेंबर हैं प्रोफेसर मनोज झा जी, उनको यह दायित्व दिया कि वो इस बात का ख्याल रखें कि कहीं कोई परेशानी नहीं हो, लीगल बैटल से लेकर और बाकी एडमिनिस्ट्रेटिव लेवल पर। और इस बात को पूरी तरह से मैं बहुत जिम्मेदारी और जवाबदेही के साथ इस फोरम पर रखना चाहता हूं कि बहुत तरह की भ्रांतियां बाहर में मुझे भी सुनने को मिली जब मैं जामिया तरफ गया और बाकी जगह। लेकिन इसमें आपसे मैं इतना ही अर्ज करूं कि इसमें कहीं कोई सच्चाई नहीं है लेश मात्र भी। और ये मिरान हैदर जी के जो बहनोई, उनके जो भाई हैं, और उनके घर पर जाकर कोई पूछ सकता है। कई तरह की बातें हमें भी सुनने को मिली कि इसमें क्या सच है। ऐसा कभी हो नहीं सकता जिस लीडर ने ये कहा हो कि जितनी प्रधानमंत्री की जान की कीमत है, उतनी ही इस देश के आम इंसान की जान की कीमत है। और ये कोई रेटोरिकल बातें नहीं, वह अपने एक स्टेट के यूथ विंग के प्रेसिडेंट को अबेंडन कर दे, यह तो अपने आप में ही बहुत ही हास्यास्पद बात है। तो इसलिए
sorry to interrupt.
इतना ही कहना चाहता हूं कि मिरान हमारे बहुत ही डियर कॉमरेड रहे हैं, और उनके साथ हर दुख दर्द में और उनकी हर लड़ाई में हमारी पार्टी पूरी मुस्तैदी के साथ है। यह तो कोई मिरान जी के परिवार से पूछ सकता है। जी शुक्रिया।
Thank you.
Okay, so I once again try to see that we have sort of limits of our time. So if you can please stick on to the time we have been given, it would be better. And next year I would like to invite Ajmal Khan, who is a faculty of Ashok University. Moreover, he is a poet and he is an author. I would like to invite him to the program.
Hello, hi. So I hope you all can hear me, right?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. So thank you, Campus Front of India, for having me and also conducting such an important talk. So I think a lot of things has been already been said. I don't want to add things into it, but I just want to flag off a couple of things. And I also see this as an opportunity that I'm also speaking to vibrant youth leaders here who have either spoken before me or are going to speak after me. So I have also been a student activist, during my student days, and of course I continue to contribute into the politics that are led by sections of the marginalized communities, particularly Dalits, Muslims, and Adivasis in the country. So a couple of things, when we say emergency or even undeclared emergency, Bunyani Sahab has already been spoken about this, that, the kind of emergency that we have had in the 75 is a very different form of emergency that we have had later or now. Now, I don't even agree if we say that what we are undergoing is an emergency. Of course, what we have is a very clear-cut Hindutva fascist government led by the BJP and supported, backed by not only the RSS, but thousands of Hindu radical organizations across the country. Now, which means what the trap that we are in, the crisis that we are in India is much more deeper and is much more nuanced than the crisis that many other countries has witnessed in the past. Actually, now we have a very different leader who could even seen as a very difficult person than what Germany had seen or what Italy had seen. So let's first of all accept the fact that this is not merely an emergency, or this is not merely an undeclared emergency. We are in a very deep mess of an Hindutva, Brahmanical, fascist government that is supported by thousands of organizations from Kerala to Kashmir to Chhattisgarh to Gujarat. You have, like for example, I have had an opportunity to look at the Hindu radical organizations who were particularly involved in the Bhima Koregaon controversy. If you look at their numbers, you would be shocked actually. That is the number: Parshuram Sena, this Sena, that Sena. Now what happens is that we don't have a mechanism to at least understand what all these organizations are doing and how they are catering into this deeper mess that we are in, that is the Hindu fascist government. Now, let's accept this fact, and then let's start talking about what can be done or what should be done. Okay, now the ways in which how this Hindutva fascism work is, of course, we have seen brutal killing of a series of very leading intellectuals in the country. Narendra Dabholkar is one of the most respected intellectuals and rationalists in the Maharashtra. He was brutally murdered, and I have a series of, we have a long list of people who were killed in this category, where so many of journalists, rationalists, scientists who are getting killed. I mean, so this is how the ways in which this particular Hindutva government, fascist government, has been eliminating people who have been speaking against their ideologies, their governments, their organizations, their ideology, and what they do. So we have very different ways in which how all these organizations work in very deep rooted, even in the deep jungles of central India. You have Hindu radical organizations working to make Adivasis Vanvasis and then make them Hindus. Indian Adivasis, the tribal communities of India, were the first people who took arm against the British. They were the most rebellious against them, and they never accepted or they never uh, 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 said, or they never claimed that they were Hindus. Now the effort is to make Adivasis as Hindus. So the crisis that we have is not only the BJP in power, not only the RSS who is there supporting the BJP, and this crisis is also not going to go from some sort of electoral alliances of some all progressive parties, all democratic parties, or secularists. No, that is not going to happen here. If any of you think that that's not going to happen, we are on a different trip altogether. That's not going to happen. Now, what we have seen, particularly in the last 10 years, is highly or highest radicalization of the Hindu youth. Now, most of you who or those of you who come from North India would have a flavor how do RSS and the allied organizations do recruit Hindu boys or even now Hindu girls into their fold. Yeah. So do we have a mechanism to get into this and de-radicalize these Hindus? We don't have. Now, what is the program that the secularists of this country, or what is the program that the progressives or who claims to be as the progressive Hindus of this country to offer and to engage with these kind of youth who go demolish masjid, who lynch, who aspire to rape Muslim girls, or who kill Dalits? What is the program and policy and the project that we have, even as democratic secular parties, whichever party? I'm not taking names of each parties, that how on a very local unit level each parties are going to confront or challenge or work among youth, among women, among families. So so without a comprehensive program like this to engage people on the ground from unit level to taluka level to district level to state level to national level, I do not see, or I am not very optimistic about all this progressive thought or this secular thought that we have been talking about, or even that we are going to talk in the future. We do need, of course, like most of you were in front of a lot of protest, particularly in the NRC CAA, like of course specifically even apart from that, since the Modi government was in power. Now, most of you were located in the universities, and the ways in which how universities have been destroyed is one of the pathetic sense. Like we have had a lot of research, even conducted by a lot of foreign researchers who are based in the US, UK, and elsewhere, have demonstrated how public education, how public health, or how anything that has to do with public has been has got some sort of important, and how we made a lot of progress in terms of health and education. Of course, these were not full development in that sense. So the ways in which how public institutions have been dismantled completely and destroyed. Now all the universities, you have an RSS backed like a radical guy or a women as the vice chancellors, and you have now the Indian Science Congress presenting thesis on like Pushpaga Vimana, on nuclear energy during ancient times, and so on. So we are not only in a shit or in a deep crisis that is only an electoral. We are in a cultural crisis, we are in a social crisis, and we are in a very deep rooted trouble caused by Hindutva and the RSS in the deep ground. And without having any program, without having a clear-cut policy to address this, we might not be able to get out of this political crisis actually. Of course, we do have a lot of progressive signs of protest coming from farmers, from students, from Dalits, from Adivasis. If you only look at what happened in the state of Maharashtra in the aftermath of Bhima Koregaon, you did see how ideologically as well as politically the Dalit movement in the country can dismantle or can confront Hindutva. We also see how Muslim women as well as Muslim youth could do this in not only in Shaheen Bagh but elsewhere. So what I have to say is that we are not just a crisis of uh, 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 emergency or an undeclared emergency. We are in a deeper cultural, political, social, and much more deeper crisis that is called Hindu Rashtra. We are in a path of making of this particular thing called Hindu Rashtra. Now, if you don't have a political alternative, a social alternative, a cultural alternative, and many other multiple alternatives to confront this, challenge this, and dismantle this, I think we do not have so much hopes about future. So just giving that note of caution, I would like to conclude here, and I would thank once again Campus Friend of India for giving me this opportunity, and thank you everyone. Fatima, you're mute. You're mute.
Sorry. Thank you, brother. We have two more persons yet to talk. And now I would like to invite Khalid Khan. He is assistant professor in Indian Institute of Dalit Studies. So,
thank you. Sorry, I was facing some problem, network issues, so I could not. I was listening, but I could not appear. So I will try to wind up my talk in 10 to 15 minutes. So I think I should start because we are talking about the kind of emergency-like situation and the falling and deterioration of democracy in India. So recently, one Sweden-based institute it has published a report, and this report was in news because it focused in India in bad light. Why? Because it is telling that electoral democracy in India is turning into electoral autocracy. This means that the democratic freedoms is on decline in India. So, and what is very interesting is that this report tells that it was uncertain about classifying India into that category last year because it did not have enough data. But now it is very clear that India is not performing good in terms of indicators of democracy. Another important observation from that report is that last year, India was among top 50% countries in terms of its performance in democracy. But this year, it is among the bottom 20%, 50%, and it is coming towards the end among if we rank it. It has already ranked it among different democracy, and it is close to 90. But why this kind of undeclared emergency and the fall of democracy we are witnessing in this country? Generally, it is told that this is something this has happened suddenly. But I feel and that this is not a abrupt phenomena. This is not a sudden phenomena, but our democracy has gradually drifted towards the phenomena which we are facing today. And this report also talks about this, that there are certain indicators And there are some patterns which is followed, and this pattern remains same if we compare different countries which are struggling in terms of democracy. And this pattern is that it begins with attacking media and civil society. Then it tries to silence opponents, and finally it tries to distort the election, undermine the electoral result. And this is why the report has dedicated one chapter on India, and it's telling that democracy broken down in India, and world's largest democracy has turned into autocracy. Again, if we see the recent phenomena, what is happening in India, and we should largely agree with this conclusion. The kind of censorship we have seen recently, the whole Twitter controversy, it is trying to regulate social media according to its ideology and expectation. Government is again targeting journalists, and one report was published by Wire. It reported that at least 55 Indian journalists faced police action by the government for reporting COVID critically. Today, I was going through one news that 3 journalists were booked for reporting demolition of mosque in Mathura in Uttar Pradesh. Then some members from Campus Front also, they visited Hathras to express solidarity, and they were arrested. Many well-known personalities from civil society attempts have been made to silence them by drawing them into controversies, and also by booking case on many. So this is the larger pattern, and the sedition case, this case is being used as a kind of weapon to silence people. Sedition, UAPA, whoever tries to speak, whoever tries to criticize the policies of the government, sedition case is the kind of gift government provides them. So, but what is the reason? Is it, of course, the report has analyzed the symptoms of this fall in democracy, and we can tell that uh, though it's very difficult to tell that we have reached towards that at the culmination point of so-called emergency, or we are still drifting toward that, or we will get something good news in 2024. This is also hello. Hello. Am I audible?
Yeah, continue, please.
Yeah, sorry, sir. So then what is the reason? The reason is not only these kinds of symptoms that government is restricting civil society, government is restricting journalists, and it is booking activists. These are symptoms of the phenomena. The reason is the kind of ideology which we are seeing, and it has history of more than 100 years. Indian version of fascism. This is the reason, and we have to go beyond these symptoms, and we have to look into those ideologies. And when we are talking about democracy, when we are discussing about of freedom of expression, then we should know that we have another version, Indian version, Indian model of understanding about politics, which tells that our supreme leaders should not be criticized, and after that these supreme leaders becomes God, and some leaders become God when they are alive, and the phenomena which is pushing India towards this so-called emergency, this undeclared emergency, is the kind of belief that their leader is their god, and this should be challenged. If we see the the way government has dealt with pandemic situation, this will tell what is happening in this country. When we were witnessing more than 1 lakh infections in the country, our leaders were telling that we have won the war against pandemic. When the whole world was concerned about rising infection, the second wave of this pandemic, the Kumbh Mela was going on Uttar Pradesh, and not it was done by some devotees, but the leaders were justifying that Mela. They were telling that some were telling that this will fight coronavirus, some were telling that this will not infect these people, and all these kind of nonsense justifications. And I can tell you with full confidence and full responsibility, there are crores of people who were buying this argument. And so uh, this is the reason that the way criticism should be shown in the public domain, this is not being shown. This is being shown as a kind of anti-national phenomena, as a kind of anti-Hindu phenomena, as a kind of an ideology which is dangerous for so-called their version of nationalism. So this is a kind of chauvinist definition of nationalism, chauvinist definition of their way of politics, which is drifting out the situation towards so-called towards undeclared emergency situation. Again, when the country was struggling with pandemic, our prime minister was waiting for Boris Johnson, and he was trying to do a similar kind of program which he did in first wave by inviting Donald Trump. And this is telling the attitude, and it took much time for him to recognize that we are facing very serious crisis, we are facing pandemic which will kill our citizens like insects. So, and another important aspect I think we should think about this is about the solution on this phenomena. What can defeat this Indian version of fascism? Is it simply criticism? Is it simply telling that these leaders uh, are are threat for Indian democracy? Or we should think about the different kinds of models. And if we are talking about respecting Indian diversity, if we are talking about respecting this democracy, we should also accept the fact that India is a country which is, I think, and which is a fact also, uh, is highly diverse country, and there are almost every religions in this country, and there are thousands of castes in our country. So when we are talking about the society, we should respect diversity. At the same time, when we are talking about politics, we should respect diversity. This is happening. We are facing this situation because we have been not able to transform our social diversity into the political diversity. We could not distribute powers among the different groups. We could not yes, and that is why this kind of uh, crisis we are facing today. So at last I would conclude that if we are truly committed to fight this fascism, the one and only one way is the way Dr. Ambedkar had suggested. This is political representation of different groups and political self-determination, political and social movement by the deprived groups who can question this kind of fascism, and the unity and of different kinds of movement which has been told by many speakers today. This is the only solution to fight this kind of undeclared emergency. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for your time and valuable words. Now, I would like to invite Sister Hasina Ahmad. She is the Central Secretary of All Assam Minority Students Union. I would gladly invite her.
थैंक यू। पहले तो मैं बहुत बहुत शुक्रिया अदा करना चाहती हूँ पूरे कैंपस फ्रंट ऑफ इंडिया को कि आज यहाँ पे हमें मौका दिया बात रखने के लिए। और आज जो 46 अनडिक्लेयर्ड इमरजेंसी है उसके बारे में ही मैं थोड़ा बहुत बात रखूंगी, क्योंकि देखिए फिलहाल 1975-77 में उस समय में नेशनल इमरजेंसी हुआ था। उस टाइम पे फंडामेंटल राइट्स को असॉल्ट मिला था। फिर अपने ऑपोजिशन के जितने भी लोग थे, ऑपोजिशन पार्टीज के लीडर्स लोगों को जेल में डाला गया था। फिर मीडिया को दबाव में रखा गया था। फिलहाल अभी देश का जो हालात है, अभी जो माहौल है, पॉलिटिकल एटमॉस्फेयर जो है, अभी भी उसी तरफ मतलब उस टाइम पे 1975 में जिस तरह का सिचुएशन हुआ था, अभी भी हम मतलब देख सकते हैं कि ऐसा ही एक माहौल बना है अभी पूरे देश में। तो अभी फिलहाल हम देख सकते हैं कि रूलिंग पार्टीज ने जो भी बिल लाया, फार्मर्स बिल, ट्रिपल तलाक को लेके, फिर न्यू एजुकेशन पॉलिसी, ये सब लाया है। और किस तरह से सीए के बारे में हम इस मुद्दे को लेके, जिस तरह से हम स्टूडेंट्स लोगों ने जिस तरीके से प्रोटेस्ट कर रहे थे पूरे देश में, सभी राज्यों में, और स्टूडेंट्स लोगों के फिलहाल जितने भी साथी हैं हमारे, उन लोगों को किस तरह से यूपीए लगा के जेल में रखा है। और सफुरा है यहाँ पे, साथी सफुरा भी थे, उनको मालूम है कि किस तरह से उनके साथ भी हुआ, और सोशल मीडिया में भी बहुत बुरे तरीके से उनको ये किया था। तो ये सब जो हो रहा है, एक के बाद एक साथी जिन लोगों ने अपना आवाज उठा रहे थे, अपने राइट्स के बारे में बोल रहे थे, अपने न्याय के लिए आवाज उठा रहे थे, सभी साथियों को एक एक करके किस तरह से मतलब देशद्रोही का जो एक ये है उस पे रखा है, फिर यूएपीए लगा के जेल में डाला गया है। हमारे साथी मीरान हैदर को लेके उमर खालिद, अखिल गोगोई आसाम से, स्पेशली मैं आसाम से हूँ, तो अखिल गोगोई के लिए भी हम बहुत ये कर रहे हैं। लेकिन सभी साथियों को जिस तरह से जेल में डाला गया है, हमें मालूम है कि किस तरह से स्टूडेंट्स लोग और प्रोफेसर्स लोगों को भी जिन लोगों ने अपना आवाज उठाया, अपने गवर्नमेंट का जो पॉलिसी है उनके उस पॉलिसी के अगेंस्ट में अगर क्रिटिसाइज करें तो उन लोगों को भी अरेस्ट किया गया है। तो हम ये कह सकते हैं, फिर अभी फिलहाल उस टाइम पे 1975 के उस इमरजेंसी टाइम में जिस तरह से मीडिया को एक दबाव में रखा गया था, अभी भी फिलहाल हालात देश में ऐसे ही है कि मीडिया को एक दबाव में रखते हैं, दूसरे जितने भी हो सके उतने उन लोगों के खिलाफ ले आते हैं, और जिन मीडिया ने उनके अगेंस्ट बोलते हैं तो उन लोगों का हालात क्या होता है, ये भी हमें पता है और हम देख रहे हैं। बात यह है कि फिलहाल लास्ट जो दिल्ली हाई कोर्ट का जजमेंट आया नताशा देवांगना और आसिफ इकबाल के बारे में, ये जजमेंट देख के सबको पता चला कि जो ऐसे तो सबको मालूम है, फिर भी इस जजमेंट ये एक साउंड जजमेंट आया, जो जिस जजमेंट के बाद सबको पता चला कि किस तरह से अन्य हमारे और भी जितने साथी हैं उन लोगों को जेल में किस तरह से रखा, और इन लोगों ने भी अपना आवाज उठाया था, अपने हक के लिए बात बोल रहे थे, और फिर इन लोगों को जेल में डाला गया। और प्रोटेस्ट करना और मतलब टेररिस्ट के बीच में क्या फर्क है, ये जजमेंट में आ गया। तो फिलहाल देखिए स्टूडेंट्स लोगों के बारे में मैं यही ये करती हूँ कि हम स्टूडेंट्स हैं और जितने भी साथी हैं, देश का अभी जो हालात है कि हमारे कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन के बारे में और राइट्स के बारे में हमें सब मालूम है, और हम अगर अपने हक के लिए लड़ाई करते हैं तो किस तरह से हमें दबाव में रखा जाते हैं, किस तरह से हमें जेल में डाला जाते हैं, तो हम इकट्ठा होकर एक यूनिटी बन के काम करना पड़ेगा। ये सही बात है। और कैंपस फ्रंट ने जिस तरह से एक स्टेप लिया है, ये बहुत ही अच्छा एक स्टेप है, मैं बोलना चाहती हूँ। फिलहाल हम अगर देखें तो ओवरऑल अगर हम देखें तो हम देख सकते हैं कि देश में पूरे किस तरह से एक कम्युनिटी को टारगेट करके काम हो रहा है, मुस्लिम लोगों को और दलित, टी ट्राइब, इन लोगों को टारगेट करके ही ये सरकार काम कर रहे हैं। फिलहाल हम अगर असम में देखें, एनआरसी का प्रोसेस कहीं पे भी नहीं हुआ। फिर असम में 2015 से एनआरसी का काम चल रहे थे, और लास्ट जो फाइनल रिपोर्ट आया, उसके बाद 19 लाख लोगों का नाम नहीं आया। फिर हम ये कह रहे थे, हमारे ऑल असम माइनॉरिटी स्टूडेंट्स यूनियन की तरफ से हम सरकार के साथ थे, क्योंकि हमें ये था कि असम का जो एक इशू है, एनआरसी इशू लेके बहुत दिनों से वहाँ पे एक जो बांग्लादेशी एक टैग लगाते हैं, मतलब जो बंगाली मुस्लिम स्पीकिंग लोग हैं, तो हम चाहते थे कि एनआरसी का काम हो जाए वहाँ पे, और हम भी सरकार के साथ थे। लेकिन जो लास्ट 19 लाख लोगों का नाम नहीं आया, हम सोच रहे थे कि इसमें क्या स्टेप लिया जाए और क्या हो सकते हैं। लेकिन हम अभी देख रहे हैं कि सरकार की तरफ से फिर क्योंकि ये सुप्रीम कोर्ट, ऑनरेबल सुप्रीम कोर्ट के गाइडेंस से ही पूरे काम हो रहे थे। फिलहाल सुप्रीम कोर्ट में फिर असम सरकार से अपील किया है कि बॉर्डर एरियाज में 20% और बाकी एरियाज में मतलब 10% ऐसे रीवेरिफिकेशन होना चाहिए। जो एक मुद्दा मतलब एनआरसी का पूरा इतने इस सिचुएशन, किस हालात में मतलब गुजारना पड़ा लोगों को ये प्रोसेस करने के लिए, तो पूरे ये एक माहौल ऐसे बन गया था। फिर भी अच्छे तरीके से काम हुआ, क्योंकि ये ऑनरेबल सुप्रीम कोर्ट की गाइडेंस में हुआ था, बहुत अच्छे से हुआ। लेकिन लास्ट में फिर अभी इन लोगों का जो स्टेप है, मतलब ये आप बोल सकते हो कि सरकार का, स्पेशली बीजेपी सरकार ने जो स्टेप ले रहे हैं, मतलब इन लोगों का कोई ऐसा नहीं है कि एनआरसी जो इश्यूज है, इतने दिनों का एक मुद्दा है, ये अच्छे से हो जाए या खत्म हो जाए। लेकिन इन लोगों का एक यही मानना है कि इन लोगों को एक इश्यूज चाहिए पॉलिटिक्स करने के लिए। अगर ये खत्म हो जाए तो फिर क्या करेंगे, क्या इश्यूज लाएंगे, ऐसा एक माहौल अभी हो गया फिलहाल असम में भी। और इस पेंडेमिक के टाइम में अगर हम देखें तो ज्यादा तरफ ये दुख की बात है कि एक कम्युनिटी को टारगेट करके, मुस्लिम लोगों को टारगेट करके ना फिलहाल इविक्शन जो हो रहा है सोनितपुर डिस्ट्रिक्ट, करीमगंज, होजाई में, फिलहाल रिसेंटली होजाई में 34 फैमिलीज को इविक्शन हुआ है। अभी हालात ऐसा है कि लोग इस कोरोना के टाइम पे सरकार का जो डायलॉग है कि घर पे रहो, अच्छे से रहो, फिर इन लोगों ने ही इविक्शन करा के लोगों को घर से बाहर निकल दिया जा रहा है और इस तरह का काम कर रहे हैं। जो हमें ये मानना है कि अभी फिलहाल देखिए, इस गरीब लोग, जिन लोगों के पास एक ही घर थे रहने के लिए, पूरा फैमिली एक घर में रहते थे, उन लोगों को अगर एविक्शन हुआ तो अभी इन लोगों का हालात क्या होगा। इस तरीके का एक के बाद एक प्रॉब्लम सरकार ने जिस तरीके से एक कम्युनिटी को टारगेट करके कर रहे हैं, ये सबको मालूम पड़ गया। तो हमें ये मानना है कि स्पेशली जो स्टूडेंट्स लोग हैं, जो हमारे साथी हैं, सब अपने एक हिम्मत रख के, यूनिटी बना के, हमें ये मानना है कि डेवलपमेंट के लिए, कम्युनिटी का और ओवरऑल डेवलपमेंट के लिए काम करना पड़ेगा। और मतलब जैसा सिचुएशन हो रहा है पूरे देश में, ये सबको मालूम है। हम इतना ज़्यादा नहीं बोलेंगे क्योंकि अभी फिलहाल टाइम भी नहीं है, लास्ट में आ गई। तो जो भी है, सभी साथियों को मैं सॉलिडरिटी ऑफ कोर्स है, जितने भी हमारे साथी है, दिल के अंदर हम ये चाहते हैं कि बहुत जल्द ही इन साथियों को बाहर ले आए और मतलब हमारा जो एक मकसद है, जिस तरह से हम काम कर रहे थे, हम इस तरह से काम आगे भी करके जाइए। और सबको यही बोलना चाहूंगी कि stay strong, stay confident, don't get distracted from our developmental goal, and we will win one day, inshallah. Thank you.
Thank you, sister. And so I would like to say thank you for all of you, and also I would like to invite Brother Sajid Sahib, the National President of Campus Friend of India, to conclude the program.
Thank you all of you for joining with us and making this program a successful one. I'm not taking each and every one, but I would like to thank all. First of all, I would like to remind the brave fighters who fight against the injustice and oppressions and who are in jail now in different parts of the country on fabricated cases in Delhi related to the Delhi genocide, and people who are in jail in Uttar Pradesh, and many academicians and activists in jail in Maharashtra. So solidarity to them, and we will be fighting with them for the justice and against the oppression. I'm not going to say in detail because already we have crossed our time limits, and but 2 points I would like to flag here that one is many of us from these talks, I understood that many of us are realizing that unconditional solidarity is a very, very important thing in this fight against this Hindutva fascism. Because we know that many people, especially in two aspects, especially in the Muslim community, within the community, that many people are believing that some of us, especially there's a sectarianism is in the community. They are Shia, they are Sunni, they are Bara, the kind of sectarianism is very much evident. So that kind of divisions should be kept aside, and we will give solidarity to all. That we all are victims, not only Muslims, the entire people of the country who are against the RSS, BJP are the victims of their oppression. So the unconditional solidarity, there should not be any condition, only one condition, that everybody should fight against RSS, Hindutva fascism, and regain the constitutionality or regain the secular nature of our country. That should be one condition to give solidarity or express the solidarity to the people who are fighting against fascism. And second thing is, I would like to say that most of us, almost all speakers, have identified that who are the beneficiaries of this hate politics or this polarization or making this divisions among the victims. They are RSS, Hindutva fascism. We know there are, Ajmal also pointed out that there are many organizations who are playing same as RSS, but we should understand that RSS is not the only organization. We can say their ideology, the ideology works in everywhere. Their idea hate is based on hate. So the hate politics is working everywhere within different organizations, within different political parties. This is not only in RSS. So there are hundreds of organizations. They are spreading this disinformation, and they are spreading this hate against Muslims. We know that the entire beneficiary of this Islamophobia, the rampant Islamophobia in India is RSS. They are creating this Islamophobia, and we should realize, we should understand the real enemy of the country, and fighting against RSS is the only solution to come out of this scenario. So outside the Muslim community, if you are considering the community outside the Muslims, we know there are many, especially the progressive left or central. There are different people are there. They are fighting against this RSS, but they are not ready to express their solidarity to many organizations or many individuals who are in this same fight, because they are saying they are radicals, they are supporting terrorism, they are supporting violences. So this kind of labeling against some of the organizations and some of the individuals of the victims should not be useful to the larger level mass mobilization against RSS. So left organization, I understood that left organization should come forward to give much more solidarity to the victims, and within the community there needs to be more unity in different sects of the community, and there is only way out of it. So as a youth, concerned citizens in the country, youth, we have a larger space in here, because we all are sharing the same mentality, that we know, we realize the enemy of the country. But what RSS has done here is that they planted Muslims as the enemy of the country. They spread the Islamophobia. We know that after 1975, RSS gained momentum. RSS gained momentum in 80s and 90s. They were very sorry, in 80s and 90s. In 80s and 90s, there were very much of Islamophobia, and the polarization is very at peak, were at peak. And 1992 Babri Masjid demolition was happened. All this was planned by RSS, and they gained political momentum out of this. But we are considering, after this 30-40 years, after 1974, 1992, when we are in 2020-21, we know how RSS gained momentum of this Islamophobia, because they planted Muslim as the enemy. So most of the people, especially from the larger section of the supporters of the RSS, are believing that the Muslims are the real enemy of the country. And within that, they made this political leap here in country. For the last 7 years, we know that many of the BJP, even BJP is or supporters are realizing that if this kind of India are envisioned by the RSS or BJP, there will be very difficult to live in that country to the people who are Dalit or kind of oppressed people. So people realize that not only Muslims, everybody will be victim of the RSS rule. Or we know that BJP is in power, but the real what we say driver or back driver is the RSS of this BJP government. And the RSS theory, the two nation theory, all these things are executed by the BJP, because these theories are firstly propounded by the RSS ideologues. So what RSS says in 50, 100 years before is executing by the BJP, through BJP or other organizations. So I would say people of the country, especially the youth have a larger responsibility, because before the 1975 emergency, there were very what to say, students uprising against the dictatorship of Indira Gandhi, or that kind of centered politics. So that should be, there is a scope for that politics in this 2021 also. We, the youth, should come together and fight against this RSS. And we know that we will be facing many difficulties on this way. We know that many of us should be in jail, like Atikur Rahman Masood regarding the campus contractors, Atikur Rahman Masood, and the former General Secretary Rauf Sharif, who are in jail now in Uttar Pradesh. And we know, including me, National President, that doesn't matter. We will be in jail. We are ready to sacrifice in this fight. And we are ready to sacrifice for the people of the country. That kind of an education we are giving to the people. And we, Campus Front of India, is very open-heartedly welcome any kind of solidarity against RSS. The only condition that is we should speak against RSS, or we should fight against RSS and regain our constitutional values. That's the only thing we are put forward. So, Campus Front of India, what we realized that fighting against RSS, we need a ground level organization build up, because RSS is working in the ground level or village rural kind of level, and they are spreading disinformation among the people. So we should resist. How we should resist that? That we should realize that, we should understand that, and for that we need people, we need human resources, and we are building that. So that is the major duty we Campus Front of India is doing now. So any other organization or any individual who are ready to share their hands with us in this fight, we are also happy to share our space with them. So, that's the message we would like to give through this kind of program. And we expect and everybody who led the historic anti-CA movement, and who were working with the oppressed, most oppressed sections of the country, like Stansami and all, will be free in coming days, and we will be getting more stronger, and we will be fighting against RSS. And this program should be a new way. I hope it should be a new way or a new energy to us in this fight, inshallah. And once again, I would like to thank everybody who have actively participating and who are watching in this program. I would like to thank on behalf of Campus Front of India. Thank you once again. Assalamu alaikum to all. Hello, Fatima.
Yeah. So once again, thanking everyone for joining us. By this, we would like to conclude the program.